I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And we got...
Happy New Year, number one.
Yeah, we had an earthquake here in Mexico City early morning, so that was pretty interesting. We tried a whole lot of new assets, a whole lot of new audio stuff. So if anything goes wrong, let us know. We're going to be checking things during the show, so we may be a little bit distracted.
Yes.
You may have noticed a new intro and a new time clock.
Everything else. Yes.
That being said, do you want to get into the first story here?
Sure. I mean, also, I want to say Happy New Year. Thank you to Neo, who also wished Happy New Year to everybody. And please don't forget to like, subscribe. Subscribing is the most important right now because we're trying to get to 1,000. And what else? And that's it, I think. Oh, and we're also streaming on RUMBLE.
Yeah, you're going to see a bunch of new chapter markers, stuff like that, different sections like religion, Christianity, personality, politics, stuff like that.
Yes.
Let's start with the cover story, which was personality politics.
Sure. Let me see if this works.
System, the company store, the paradigm of absolute control.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, Robert Barnes, Candace Owens was the cover story. So let's kind of get right into this. And I have to say, I may have been wrong about this whole TPUSA ordeal. I'm starting to come to realizations. The goalposts are constantly moving. I was firmly on Candace Owens' side in the beginning. I stuck there. I still stick with it's okay to ask questions, but the type of accusations she made and what they're trying to fall back on now was financial corruption and stuff of this. I even went down that path with them. And I'll tell you, I watched Robert Barnes on Monday on, what was the show we watched him on?
Oh, that I kept telling you to watch. Paramount Tactical.
Yeah, on Paramount Tactical. And I've been watching Robert Barnes for a long, long time, but I hadn't seen his take on this particular issue. He happens to be a constitutional attorney and a tax attorney. And he went pretty in depth into how they structured everything, that it's actually one of the most legitimate organizations around. Why? Because when Biden was in office, they were constantly being audited and going after TPUSA. So Charlie had to make sure the organization was in tip-top shape. And he wanted to do the Doge audit to make the organization much more functional, and every single dollar they wanted to make sure was above board.
Which, funnily enough, is what I said and told you, but a lot of people still didn't believe it until more and more people recently, like Robert Barnes, like Alex Jones, through Paramount Tactical and other people that have been doing these sorts of investigations for a long time now are coming out with more authoritative voices that know what they're talking about.
Yeah, and I guess I was definitely wrong on this one. I will apologize to TPUSA. Not to say that things can't come out at this point, but it's not going to be nearly at the level and the accusations that were kind of being thrown out there. I'll probably wait to make further judgments. I really want to see evidence come out on trial unless there's some kind of major evidence that the sleuths are putting out. And I still am watching these sleuth channels because I am so invested, but I was dramatically wrong. Robert Barnes and a few other content creators were able to change my mind through actual evidence. Yeah. So sometimes I get it wrong, and I got it wrong on that one. And Nat the whole time actually had it right. But let's get into a little bit of the drama. We are going to switch our article screen later. It's temporary.
But yes, Reverend Jordan Wells says, explosive bombshell, Alex Jones's top guest, elite lawyer, Robert Barnes just dropped the hammer. Candace Owens is orchestrating a full-blown CIA-style psyop, a massive coordinated disinformation op to shield deep state trans-Tifa MK Ultra operations, according to this person. But let's see what Robert Barnes actually said on Alex Jones. And he was, again, also on Paramount Tactical this past week, on Monday, I believe.
And this is not to say there wasn't strange questions around Erica Kirk, TPUSA, Erica Kirk's family being linked to the military industrial complex. But that being said, I started going down these rabbit holes and I started believing things probably before I should have. And I didn't want to give up on it. That's why I started falling back on their financials as well. And once that was cleared up, it was time to admit when I was actually wrong.
Never seen so much flip-flopping, so much shell gaming, so much gaslighting, and so much peacocking around by her and her minions that, oh, the receipts, ooh, the
deep state operatives running this Trans-Tifa psych operation to create Manchurian candidates all across the world is now potentially exposed. And who all of a sudden steps in to say, oh no, nothing to see here with Tyler Robinson, nothing to see here with Trantifa, nothing to see here with its long deep state ties, nothing to see here with any of that. No, instead, it's actually Turning Point. It's the widow. It's the Turning Point security. It's the conservative movement. It's the populist cause. It's President Trump. It's Vice President Vance. Insane allegations intended to divide the right, but mostly intended to distract from the real conspiracy. That's why you nailed it the other day. Candace is QAnon part 2. These people are trying to imitate you, not knowing how you do what you do. And they end up with a half-assed version of it, like Candace Owens. The second part is, you're absolutely right. To me, I am more convinced than ever, what we talked about from the get-go, that Tyler Robinson is the murderer, but that other people were complicit in this murder. Because there is clearly an aggressive effort to spoon feed fake disinformation to Candace Owens, who either wittingly or unwittingly is running a CIA-style psyop on the American people. In order to do what? What's the main objective it achieves? The main objective is it distracts from Trantifa.
And we can leave the clip there. I will say right from the beginning, I had said that I think there is an intelligence operation going on through social media influencers, a lot of them connected to MI6, some the CIA, some the FBI. I think that's still right. I think Candace Owens is definitely linked to MI6. I kind of said that from the beginning. That being said, I thought she was going to actually have some information from an intelligence agency that was going to funnel it out through her. And it really looks like they didn't have much. And now they're trying to fall back on something, but even her source, which was Mitch Snow, I believe, man, this guy...
Allegedly, because the name keeps changing as well.
This guy was just an absolute fraud. She raised over $126,000 for him on the backs of working Americans that really didn't have that kind of money at Christmas. She's a multi-millionaire. She could have gave him money if she wanted to give him money. There's no way to get this money back now. I mean, this really undercut her legitimacy. It started with Mitch Snow, and then it went into the financials and everything else. And there was a clip of her, and she was kind of looking frantic on Monday, because I was simultaneously playing the interview with Paramount Tactical and Robert Barnes and Candace Owens. I was pausing one, watching the other, and Candace does not look good right now.
And I think it's more grasping at straws. And it's good that I thought it was going to take maybe even a bit longer for people to fully come to the realization. I mean, there's still a lot of people supporting her and saying she's 100% right, but at least more prominent voices are coming out, because initially it was just Ali Stuckey and Tim Pool, and those were the two brave ones, and then the smaller channels, now bigger, like Paramount Tactical, etc., that were going to Utah and debunking everything. For example, when she said, oh, the kid had to climb up like Spider-Man when there's actually stairs to get there, so it's not really hard to get to the position to do the actual shooting. So all of these things were already kind of known, but we needed more prominent voices to come out to say them fully.
Well, what the other side is saying, this is an open investigation. Not everything they're saying is going to be right. They're going down in different rabbit holes. I went down all of those rabbit holes with them. I watched their shows every night. The evidence they presented, I kind of presented the best bits and pieces of that on this show. And I followed them, and it was empty rabbit hole after empty rabbit hole. And they kept changing the goalposts to one of the big things that was left was their implications on TPUSA and their financials. And Robert Barnes really went into that as a tax attorney who was a friend of Charlie Kirk and actually gave advice on how to structure TPUSA. And one of the big things was tens of millions of dollars was transferred at one point, and they were asking, what's that for? Well, that was for the Get Out the Vote movement. Being a nonprofit organization, TPUSA isn't actually allowed to be in a lot of kinds of politics. So they need other structures and other entities that are public entities for TPUSA, so they can go into politics because they had a nonprofit status. So, yeah, I was able to actually be convinced with evidence through Robert Barnes, through you, through Paramount Tactical and stuff like that. And I know if I'm coming over, a lot of other people are coming over. And if they're not coming over to the other side,
well, it's not about the side, it's about the truth.
They're a lot quieter. I'm a bit more of a public voice. So when I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong.
But as you were saying, you were seeing her X space, which she did, I believe, either Monday or Tuesday, but around break, because everybody's still allegedly on break except for Alex Jones apparently. But she did this X space, and it ended up like she wanted people to ask questions and ask her questions, but then every time she had to actually answer something, it ended up looking pretty, in my opinion, pretty bad for her because she couldn't.
Well, she had a couple allies.
She got angry.
She had a couple allies on this X space, and how an X space works, she has control over who gets to talk. So she clicks somebody in and things like that. So she had a couple people that were against her and a couple people that were for her. But when the people were against her, she would rattle off all these excuses and then say, okay, we're going to go to the next person, and not want to keep answering questions, because I don't think she had answers for a lot of these questions. I think she realizes her narrative's starting to fall apart because other people are doing sleuth investigations on the other side, and they're not coming forward with evidence until they actually have evidence. And I'll even say this. Maybe part of the reason I was against TPUSA and stuff is I don't like the direction they're taking conservatism in some points. So I wanted to believe some of what ended up being lies, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But let's see the X space as well, because we do have, I mean, there's millions of clips on X right now of this specific X space, but Cinema Shogun says Candace Owens buckles under pressure during live X space. Candace literally named her X space Fort Huachuca, why it suddenly matters. But when Harrison Smith asked a simple question, why does Fort Huachuca matter, she could not answer.
Yeah, and this could have actually been a good thing for Candace going on this X space. But the people that she brought on that were going to ask questions to her, she was really cutting off and not allowing them to continue to ask questions. So this turned out bad. She looked very shaky. She looked very fidgety. She didn't look confident. She was making excuses at certain points. I mean,
it's good to hear from people who disagree with us. So Harrison, if you want to unmute yourself and jump in, that would be great.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess my whole thing is, why does this meeting even matter? Like, what is the actual claim that's being made here? That's been my confusion the whole point, the whole time, is like, okay, let's say that there's absolute proof, photographic evidence that everything that Snow says is true. Like, who cares? I mean, what does that prove? What is the actual accusation? Who do you think was conspiring with who to do what?
Yeah.
And I think, obviously the name of the episode was, the day before Charlie Kirk was murdered. The insinuation is that this was a assassination planning meeting, which I don't even see any evidence of that. And then people I'm arguing with online are saying, no, this has nothing to do with the assassination.
Yeah.
So, I guess, if the space is why this matters, why does Fort Huachuca even matter? Like, what is the claim being made? I still don't even understand that.
So it matters because why would Brian Harpole be on Fort Huachuca at all, right? It matters because he's giving an alibi, which means he doesn't want to be associated. Like, it could have easily not mattered, kind of, to speak to your credit. He could have been like, yeah, I was at Fort Huachuca with my brother, and my brother's in the military, I was dropping off some food. Okay, like that could have been then suddenly a dead end. That would have been nothing. Now, because Mitch had described this as a top secret meeting in an off-site building and had described this as top brass.
And there's been more evidence coming out. There is an actual officer in the military that looks a lot like Brian Harpole, and he's at this base on a regular basis, it looks like. The more evidence that comes out, I mean, it just refutes a lot of this. I want to really wait till this trial comes out so we get actual evidence rather than sleuth reporting at this time.
That's literally what I've been telling everybody.
But this is an 8-minute clip. But after she asks the first question, she kind of babbles on, and then she tries to go to somebody else that's kind of one of her allies so he can answer questions. What I wanted to see was a full interrogation of Candace Owens from somebody that didn't really believe in it. And I wanted to see her convince them, and she just didn't do it. And this same night that this aired, her X Space, it was almost 2 hours long. We listened to the whole thing. Robert Barnes was on Paramount Tactical, and he completely refuted everything. It was really a crystallizing moment for me where I kind of came over and I said, yeah, something may be going on still, but unless they have hard evidence, I'm going to kind of wait for the trial going forward. I was wrong on this one.
And that's the thing. Do you want to keep watching it? Or
no, this is pretty good for that.
Okay. And you have been recently discovering, I guess you have been, I already kind of knew about it, but this whole looks maxing thing and the thing that's happening on the right with, I'm guessing Gen Zers that are now, getting into this whole looks maxing thing that I have very harsh opinions about, but you go first.
Well, yeah, this was a little bit crazy. I didn't know who this kid was, Clavicle, until he came up when he hit
Clavicular.
whatever his name is. He puts makeup on. He's a very feminized person trying to get into MAGA. I mean, the guy's just crazy. We'll play a clip from him, but he came up because he originally hit somebody with his Cybertruck that looked to be homeless. I don't know if that whole thing was staged because it looks like charges aren't being pressed, but he started popping up on my feed, and man, a lot of the things he was saying was absolutely ridiculous. If he's the new generation of conservative influencer, which it looks like the previous generations are trying to put him up, because he isn't the youngest generation. The generation after him would be like Nick Fuentes and Sneeko. The generation after that is kind of my generation, which is Ben Shapiro and Michael Knowles and stuff like that. But he's been on the Michael Knowles show. He's done clips with Sneeko. He's done a show with Nick Fuentes as well. It looks like they're kind of priming him and putting him up. But the message he's kind of sending is absolutely ridiculous. Every clip I see of this kid, he just gets more and more shallow. Everything's about looks to this guy. And let me tell you, nothing's about looks. I was hoping after he hit that homeless man with his Cybertruck, he would go to prison. And then he would find out looks maxing in prison isn't necessarily the best thing for him. And maybe he would actually gain some depth. But it looks like that's not going to happen.
And I, for me, what's more worrisome is that there's so apparently, I don't know if it might be all bots, but apparently so many young kids actually looking up and wanting to do this and hitting their faces with hammers to reshape their bones. It's getting insane, and it is very parallel if you want to think about it, and if you want to see Gen Alpha and kind of younger millennials as a whole. Well, then it's very similar and parallel to what's happening with the trans community and the trans insanity that we continue to see, capturing mostly through online social media influencers and then going out into kind of, I mean, this copying each other of doing it without fully thinking, because there's no actual true identity that they have, that has not been fostered. And I think it's in both cases.
Well, it's very strange because the biggest influencers from multiple generations now are kind of putting this guy forward and pushing him into the mainstream. Yet a lot of smaller influencers like this channel, like a lot of channels with, I would say, under 50,000 subs are speaking the truth and speaking up against this guy. Maybe let's show the audience who he is in case they don't know who he is.
That guy.
And there was a lot of clips. This is just one I took. There's another one where he's putting on makeup, talking about you need a looks max as a man, put makeup on so you can be the best you can be. I mean, he sounds like a woman at this point.
Megan Basham says, even beyond the vile things he's saying, this kid's whole vibe is repellent, like the term ick was invented for the feeling guys like this create in women. And it is, I mean, as a woman, I can say, yes, gives me the ick as well.
Would Charlie Kirk have gotten assassinated if he were Chad? Well, probably not, and here's why. Good-looking people experience something called the halo effect, so it's quite possible that if Charlie were to be better-looking, someone wouldn't have hated him enough to assassinate him. What happened to him is quite terrible, and this might be an insensitive video to make, but I'm really trying to bring awareness to how brutal the black pill is. Looks really are going to determine the quality of your life to a high degree, so if you're not doing everything you can to maximize them, you're missing out.
Yeah, and I thought he was trolling, but the more I watched him, the more stupid things he said, the more outrageous things he did. And then he was in long form interviews trying to actually defend these points of view. He spends a lot of time working out, but you know, when I was younger, what I did was I took MMA classes, jiu-jitsu classes. Eventually, I taught jiu-jitsu. And what you realize is you actually get a functional skill that you can protect your family, can protect your community, and protect the people around you, and at the same time, also get in shape.
And what did he do? He apparently was injecting his 17-year-old girlfriend with who knows what in the face, which is also, again, a problem. This whole looking good, yes, I mean, there are studies, very few studies, but there are studies that say that there is a correlation between how successful you are in life and how good looking you are to your society broadly. But at the same time, we know for sure that that isn't the end all be all, especially for men and what actually manhood, because I used to criticize Andrew Tate a lot, for example.
Yeah.
I think this is the next step. This is way worse than Andrew Tate because this is just focused on looks. At least Andrew Tate was trying to get people successful and to sleep around, which I don't agree with, but at least there were more steps other than you have to look your best 100% of the time. This is
Well, it's funny that you're saying that now because I know, and anybody that watches the show knows you absolutely hate Andrew Tate.
I don't use the word hate, but I didn't like it.
I like a lot of the things he says. I do realize a lot of the shit he says is absolutely stupid. But when he did have his boxing match recently and he lost, he really took it like a man and didn't make any excuses for it and congratulated his opponent. A lot of the advice he does give is good, and a lot of the advice he does give is stupid. But it looks like this is the new generation's Andrew Tate, and there is no depth. So even if Andrew Tate has good points and bad points, this guy just seems like no good points, and he's all about looks. And looks are not only going to give you so far, they're going to hinder you in a lot of other ways. You can maximize your looks as in getting in shape without having to, that being your sole concentration.
But actually, and I think, I mean, I'm going to speak like a woman, I don't know, I'm not a man, but before when men were more in the skilled trades or used to have to work out more just for work and etc., that increases your testosterone levels. I mean, yes, we have an issue with hormonal levels in general because of microplastics and hormones that are put into meat and everything else. So that is also an issue. But if he just understood that, yes, working out, but there's way much more to being a man than looking good, putting on makeup and looking the best you can. That doesn't actually make a man. That makes you more like a trans woman.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this guy will pop up more and more because a lot of the things he says is just outrageous. But there was another clip I didn't grab today where he was talking with Sneeko, who's another influencer, and he's like, well, I can't have babies, but because I use injectables so I can get bigger. That being said, I have a protocol if I want to have a kid. This kid's like 22 or 23 years old. The fact that he has to have a protocol if he wants to have a baby, what he's doing to himself, his hormones are not good in the long term. And I think he's going to end up regretting a lot of the things he did and said. I absolutely believe in free speech, and I'm glad this guy's online saying the things he says because hopefully this actually will steer people away from going in that direction, especially in the America First and conservative movement. That being said, maybe we can move on from him because...
Yeah, well, I was going to say, with the whole injecting stuff and losing your fertility, it's the exact same story we just went through with all the trans kids and all the trans stuff. There is no trans kids. Trans kids don't exist. But with teenagers being hormonally changed, now being infertile without any kind of quality of life in the majority of cases, I could go into it, but I want to move on. And this is so parallel. It's crazy. So maybe let's look at the generation as a whole, America, Canada, the Western world as a whole, and say, why is this happening?
Well, I think this may be the beginning of
And it is another facet of feminism is what I'm
not saying this is necessarily it, but this can be maybe conservative body dysmorphia. We'll see where things go with this kid, but definitely going to keep an eye on him because he made me laugh and made me angry all at the same time. That being said, he definitely has no influence, hopefully, on anybody that I know. Okay.
And someone we hadn't talked about in a while is Ashley Sinclair, the one that had allegedly had a baby with Elon Musk. Or
that's where I knew her from.
That.
I seen this clip and I asked you, I said, is Ashley Sinclair that girl that went to the sperm bank and got Elon Musk to impregnate her? Sure enough, it was. That's where I knew her from. So at least I had some context. She's now going into free speech and saying how we should not have free speech on social media. I'm going to let her put it in her own words, but let's get to the clip here.
Andrew Tate's not the problem, because if you take Andrew Tate away, you still have this massive group of young men who are clinging to that message on shows like the Whatever podcast. They're bringing them on for this humiliation porn. Why is all of this content allowed on YouTube? YouTube, who has been, at the forefront of we need to protect those who are, a protected class. And women typically fall into that class. So why all of a sudden is all of this content allowed on YouTube? That is terribly misogynistic. That's terribly degrading to women. When I don't think that would have been allowed.
Okay, and I'm kind of putting her as an example of how censorship is creeping into independent media. Not that she's a very prominent figure, but there's obviously money and funding behind her. And the fact that independent media is the one giving this message is a little bit crazy, because we're going to show some clips in a moment of mainstream media actually trying to go in the opposite direction now. Let's continue this though.
Years ago. I just don't. I think that would have been removed from the platform swiftly. Society hasn't changed that it's really fun to watch a witch be burned at the stake, right? Mm-hmm. It's really fun to watch this humiliation of women on shows like the Whatever podcast.
Jesus Christ wants you to do OnlyFans work, just so that we're clear?
Yes.
If God wanted you to do OnlyFans, then what would Satan want you to do?
To stop doing OnlyFans.
Yeah, why do you think he'd want you to stop?
Because I love making sexual content.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you think that God, his preference would be that you continue to make sexual content on your OnlyFans?
Yes, he wants me to do it.
You have these women who they know, they're just OnlyFans models. They're not exactly the brightest bulbs in the bunch. They're not bringing them on for intellectual conversation. They're bringing them on for this humiliation porn. And I think that's become really attractive and rewarded in algorithms. This sort of nastiness, this division of the sexes is rewarded a lot more than talk.
And if she thinks this is so detrimental that they're bringing on these women, why doesn't she go on there and debate her? Andrew Wilson is actually a debater. That's the gentleman we just seen in that clip. She's willing to talk about how all society needs censorship because these people that are representing women aren't well spoken, and this is becoming humiliation porn in her words. Why doesn't she go on and actually debate her views? I think she has no real justification for the censorship she wants.
Talking about what you or I or so many people might find more important. For example, what's something you might find more important than the gender divide? You can name a plethora of things. The issue in this country and the world and the West is not the division of the sexes. We're not going to look back and define this era by the division of the sexes or by the female era. We're never going to call it that.
Okay, and that's good. And I'm glad she's out there speaking, and this is why I like free speech. Now I know I probably don't need to listen to anything she says, but I will just in case she actually has an awakening and starts believing in free speech. Because if she goes down that direction, this is the opposite direction Elon Musk even has. The fact that she has a baby from Elon Musk, maybe there's some resentment there, and she's taking this position specifically to kind of spite him.
But I think she's very similar to a bunch of other commentators, creators, whatever you want to call them, that are female, that are women, but are covert feminists. I'm thinking of the Megyn Kellys, of the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, when she came out with that whole, I'm not going to stay in the kitchen, but then espouse conservative values. So in a way, I think maybe they either realize it and they're doing it on purpose, or they don't even realize it, but they have this ingrained feminism within them that they can't be insulted. Nobody can say anything bad about them. They shouldn't be in the kitchen. They should be able to work. Even Candace Owens got kind of disputed by a leftist telling her, well, if you're telling us to go making a sandwich, why do you have like a multi-million-dollar podcast and do that every day? Why don't you take care of your kids? Which, again, I don't profess to be religious. I don't profess to be a trad wife, but a lot of these women do, or at least try to exemplify like that's what they're doing. But at the same time, they're just vomiting all over the same feminist talking points that were talked about, 10 years ago by the left. So now the women in the right are kind of turning towards what women in the left were 10 years ago. So the Overton window is all over the place now.
Yeah, you definitely have to watch for feminists.
And men are becoming women as well, painting their faces.
Yeah, you're seeing men become women. You're seeing feminists creep into the conservative movement. I mean, there's a battle for the identity of not only conservatism, but what America First is. Is America First going to inherit the MAGA mantra, or kind of the future of the conservative movement? We're going to get into that in a little bit. But that being said, I do remember Ashley Sinclair having a lot of beef with Elon Musk after she had his child, allegedly. And a lot of it was about a settlement and an apartment. Where they were doing that podcast, it looked like a really nice apartment. It's not normally where they do their podcast.
No, so they were in the States.
I'm assuming that's her New York apartment that Elon Musk maybe bought. But that being said, let's get into mainstream media. And it's interesting that she's in the independent media space and she's saying more censorship. And the next two clips is actually mainstream media realizing the industry is absolutely dead unless they go back to free speech, which is a good thing.
So from Ariana Fall says, quote, breaking, CBS anchor drops the act. Legacy media is lost trust because it missed too many stories. And
okay, we can go into the clip here.
Yes, hold on. They wrote a lot of things.
A lot has changed since the first person sat in this chair, but for me, the biggest difference is people do not trust us like they used to. And it's not just us, it's all of legacy media. And I get it. I get it because I've been hearing about it from just about everybody for more than 20 years as I've traveled America on this assignment or that. My mom's neighbors in West Virginia, my own neighbors in New York City, thousands and thousands of conversations in between. Sometimes people want to talk to me about our coverage of NAFTA or the Iraq War. Other times, it's all about Hillary Clinton's emails or Russiagate. Or more recently, COVID lockdowns, Hunter Biden's laptop, or the president's fitness for office. The point is, on too many stories, the press has missed the story because we've taken into account the perspective of advocates and not the average American. Or we put too much weight in the analysis of academics or elites and not enough on you. And I know this because at certain points, I have been you. I have felt this way too. I felt like what I was seeing and hearing on the news didn't reflect what I was seeing and hearing in my own life, and that the most urgent questions simply weren't being asked. So here's my promise to you. Today and every time you see me in this chair, you come first. Not advertisers, not politicians, not corporate interests. And yes, that does include the corporate owners of CBS. I report for you, which means I tell you what I know, when I know it, and how I know it.
Okay,
and when I get it
pretty good.
wrong,
And he's saying all the right things. The question is there going to be any follow through there? And the reason the mainstream media is kind of coming around, we did see Larry Ellison by, I believe it was CBS, going into other media entities he's buying, and they want to make a change and they want to earn the public's trust back, but you're not going to win the public's trust back just by giving a speech. Now, that given, he said all the right things, but not until there's consistent action time and time again, and showing more than just one or two sides, because there's more than just the Democratic or the conservative side. There's also independent voices and things like this, and we want to see especially mainstream outlets really expose a lot of corruption and things that are going into society, like Nick Shirley has been exposing lately.
His mirror does it kind of look like AI. Like nowadays, you don't even know if it's actually true or not, which is also kind of creepy.
No, it's not AI because they're actually trying to rebrand mainstream media now, and they're trying to win the public trust, and they know they have to bring conservative voices. The question is, will they walk the walk or just talk the talk? We do have another clip that's, again, not AI, but they're all trying to rebrand here as you can trust us again. And I'll believe it when I see it.
So it's also from our now full quote, Catherine Herridge, yes, CBS walked away from Elon because they couldn't control him. And I guess we'll just watch it because...
I had conversations with some of the reporters connected to the Twitter files, and I was in my head thinking that there might be an opportunity to tell that story on CBS News. We had a number of topics under discussion. They didn't go as far as we had hoped. But at the end of the day, this opportunity to interview Elon Musk was developing. So I went to the CBS executives and I said, this is the opportunity that we have. He's saying, I want to do it live and on my platform. He's one of the most influential human beings on the planet. And the reaction from the executives was, well, we can't do it live. And I was like, what do you mean we can't do it live? I was like, well, we don't know what he's going to say. I was like, well, I'm thinking, isn't that the point of journalism? You don't know what the person's going to say? Well, you know, it has to be taped. We have to have the ability to edit it. It has to be on our platform. We have to control the platform. We talked at one point about whether we could do it sort of like a simulcast between the streaming network and maybe X, but everything just got shut down. It's one of the biggest interviews you could ever have. I felt so ashamed, frankly, that I never went back to Elon Musk and said, listen, they want to do it, but they've set all these conditions on it. I couldn't do that. This is someone whose DNA is free speech. And how do you tell someone who's committed to free speech that your network can only do it taped and only if they edit it and it can only be on their platform? I couldn't go back to him with that.
Yeah, and of the two clips we just kind of showed, I like her clip a lot more because it's a real personalized story that's exposing the network from within. And they really need change. Even there, like you said, the last guy looked like AI. I thought she looked even more like AI. Mm-hmm. Obviously, she wasn't because it was a very personalized story. That being said, the way they cut her from angle to angle, that's just opportunities that they want to consistently use that editing style. So if they do interview Elon Musk, they can put cuts in there and they can edit what they want to say. I would rather have less production value and a completely one take unedited cut and see the whole interview so I know I can trust the interview. And I think that's what especially these mainstream media networks are going to have to go to. No cuts, no editing, just show the interview raw, much like independent media is already doing.
Because they do, and mainstream media does have that opportunity, and they could do still a lot with it if they do realize and they do want to actually start doing journalism again, because they already have the connections. They already are able to interview people like Elon Musk, which I would love to do, but probably never will, because they already have that. So if you combine that with the realization that you need to be more honest, you need to be more truthful, and you have to remember what journalism is supposed to be, and not just commentary or political bias and just putting your political bias all over it, then they have a chance to bring back the people that they lost, or at least some of them. I would never go back. But
well, let's kind of remember this. Both of these people that are speaking in these two clips we just shown that are representing mainstream media that want to make a change, well, they're still reporting to the same producers, the same people that are going to either approve stories or disapprove stories, and are still want to have editorial control over everything. So I don't really think we're going to see a change. I think they want to say they're making a change. I think maybe even the journalists on the front lines want to earn the public's trust back, but I don't think their editors, their producers, and the rest of the media machine is going to let them. And a lot of these media organizations are going for bottom barrel prices now. So I think you're going to possibly see big buying conservatives come in and try to reform a lot of these networks. We're seeing them trying to do it with Barry Weiss, but it's kind of backfiring with Barry Weiss because she's getting so much hate, because she's just trying to make another kind of propaganda machine with a different point of view. It's, again, not authentic. It's nice to see both sides. I will say that, bringing her in, but I don't trust her at all. I don't like the direction she's necessarily bringing things.
And again, is it another side, or is it just the control opposition of that side? And you can say what you want, but under our auspices, and if we agree with you. And someone that might want to be turning that on its head, I guess.
Do we have any comments?
We'll read them at the end of this side, but this is the last bit of this section. Is Tommy Robinson, which I know a lot of people both agree and disagree with, but he has an idea as to what to do with citizen journalism.
Yeah, and I actually think this is a great idea. I think it can backfire, but having an umbrella organization for independent media so you can get press passes and things like this is a great idea, especially if you get to keep your independent shows and networks and you don't have to give much.
So Go-To Report says, quote, Tommy Robinson's game-changing vision and talks to build a global umbrella uniting all citizen journalists.
But on the citizen journalist thing, we've been having some talks. This is what I'd love to see coming in soon now. I'd love to see an umbrella built for citizen journalists across the globe. We've reached out to quite a lot of them. I'd love to see them all coming together under one umbrella, which would maximise all of their voices. It would give each individual that's outside a hotel, whilst I want to see them, and I say this to everyone when they come on board with us, build your own channel, yeah? But we can all come together under one thing, yeah? As a mass movement of citizen journalists, where we can share, say, for example, you've got an audience in Australia and America now. I want them all to know who the citizen journalists are in the UK. I want them to know who to support. And people want to support these groups. So I think you could have an umbrella organisation, an umbrella name that we've sort of been looking at, which I hope we put that into fruition now soon in the new year.
So you think the new activists should also start looking into becoming independent journalists as well as activists?
I think they should become independent journalists and they should all come under one umbrella.
Even if you live in a little village, become the journalist of that village?
I'm the journalist of that village under the umbrella that's recognised as citizen journalists. You're not mainstream, you don't work under any control, but I think that all of us, because I'll tell you why, because they're all going to face relentless attack and campaigns. And if there was one umbrella organisation that could offer them security when they need it, offer them legal help when they need it, I think that's what's needed to bring them all together, because if not, they're going to get isolated and picked off one by one.
Yes.
That's what I see happening.
Yeah,
so I think that power is in numbers together, having a worldwide movement of people. I think we've been put in a position, whether it be through United Kingdom, to unify people. And I think that not just unifying the country, I want to unify citizen journalists, not just in this country, but across the globe. I think all of them need to come under one umbrella movement that then offers help with them. And then, and recognition as well. I think we should have a worldwide award ceremony for some of the work some of these people do.
That's a good.
That's pretty good. And I do like Tommy Robinson, and I do like this idea. I would be cautious to say this could be used in the future if they get to start controlling people, to say, well, if you want to be part of this organization and get these benefits to lawyers and things like this, I mean, possibly, but as a concept, as an idea, I absolutely love this idea. I think it's a way to fight back against these big NGO censorship organizations that are going into Twitter, going into Facebook. We've seen what was happening with the Twitter files. So as a way to push back, I would love to see this. We all watch a lot of independent media. I know I do. I know you do. Rebel News, I would hope, would kind of back this. Tommy Robinson is backed by Rebel News, so hopefully they can try to get this thing started. And I would definitely want to possibly be a part of it. And
don't call you a Zionist, though, if it's backed by Rebel News.
Well, it's not necessarily backed by Rebel News, but yeah.
But for me, what's crazy is that is what journalism used to be. It used to be one person in the town, or two or three, that would report on goings on in the town. If something ever big happened, then they would also report on that. But it wasn't this credentialized kind of medium. It was the people actually reporting to the people, and then also some commentary, but it was in its special section. Nowadays, all mainstream news is biased in commentary, and all online news, some of it is biased in commentary, but that is where you are finding with citizen journalists and with people that go out there and have the ability, and thanks to the democratization of journalism and being able to produce content, are just showing what's happening and describing what's happening, which is what mainstream media has forgotten to do, which is how journalism even started.
Well, and I think there's one more kind of wrinkle to this story, and I think this may be the motivating factor for Tommy Robinson. There was recently a case in the UK that we reported on that a citizen journalist was forced to give up their sources because the judge said, "Oh, you're not a real journalist. You just have a YouTube station. That's not considered journalism." So having an organization that can give you general protections, press passes, and legitimize you as actual press, so you can actually protect your sources and have a lot of different add-on effects, would be generally good, given it stays decentralized and doesn't try to have any power or say over the independent journalists themselves. So
now we'll read all your comments, because we do read all the comments. So let's before we jump into the next section. So Follow the Bradley's Fun says, "There we go. Hello, thank you for being here." Ron and also said, "Shared on to my community. Thank you so much." Also, and thank you for the support also the other day as well. And for being here. Non says Valhalla VFT is awesome. You watch Valhalla?
Yeah, I watched the entire Candace Owens segment. Everybody from Wolves in Finance to Valhalla to Candace Owens to Jesse on Fire. I mean, I can literally go on. There's 10 stations I watch. You don't watch as much as I do from that side. I kind of came from that side. I was hoping they were right on some things. They just keep moving the goalposts, and a lot of the evidence they're putting forward is actually wrong. And I know
and they don't do the correcting, which would, again, you can get things wrong, but then go on and correct them once you've been exposed, or once the facts that you got wrong have been deciphered and told, and people have been told about them, then come out and have integrity and say, "Oh, I was wrong about this, this, and this." But they've all doubled, not all of them, but Candace especially has just doubled down on what she was saying.
I know Non specifically said, "Oh, watch Wolves in Finance," especially when they did the expose about the P.O. box. I had actually already watched that. I kind of knew it. I thought the evidence was kind of flimsy, but I didn't really want to come out because I kind of wanted to see where it went. But a few days later, I watched that Robert Barnes with...
Well, and I had told you months ago that was how business is conducted.
He's a tax attorney. He actually helped set a lot of it up. And the reason the Democratic Party wasn't able to go after Charlie Kirk, and they would have loved to, because he actually revolutionized conservatism when it came to get out the vote with young people. So they were to definitely investigate him. If there was one thing wrong there, they would have found it. He kept everything extremely above board. They're really clutching at things that aren't there and trying to confuse people by complex tax laws. They had a nonprofit. As a nonprofit, Charlie Kirk wasn't able to do a lot of things outwardly with politics. That's why he had a public section of the company. And that's why a lot of money was being transferred for the Get Out the Vote campaign. I mean, a lot of the things Robert Barnes said made absolute sense. A lot of the things the other side is saying I thought was on flimsy ground, but I kind of wanted to see where it went. At this point, I'm going to wait for real hard evidence to kind of come out.
Which is what I suggest everybody does. Trent Briggs says, "Candace hasn't crumbled, but I miss Candace so much this week." I mean, I miss just so we can talk about it.
Well, I'm going to continue to cover Candace as well as the other people within that sphere, and they're going to continue to ask questions. But I mean, I'm really kind of waiting for the court case to go forward. And Robert Barnes brought up a good point. And this is creating a huge distraction. So we're not going after a lot of the people that may have actually helped.
That's what I've been saying. Yes, that's what a lot of us.
What was the gentleman's name that did the shooting again?
Oh, I forgot.
God. Okay.
Robinson.
Anyway, yeah, Tyler Robinson.
Tyler Robinson. I was almost said Tommy Robinson.
Yeah, but it looks like there was probably a network of people that were helping him. Yes. But we're going down these rabbit holes that aren't being helpful. And now they're trying to fall back on TPUSA's financials, which would be good because I actually thought there was something there. But then actually thinking about it and be like, yeah, the Democrats would have been all over him. He's the one reason Trump got elected, and TPUSA was as well. So if any of their financials was out of line, they would have brought it up then.
Mm-hmm. Trent Briggs also says, Alex just mad, Candace #1 now. Well, she dropped in the rankings. I think she's like number 28
Well, no.
and dropping, or further down, I think.
She's number 28 this week, but she hasn't been on for a week. So, of course, she's going to be 28. As soon as she comes back, she's probably going to be #1 again. That being said,
the first show maybe, but the rest after that, I don't know.
I'm interested in what she says. And she's kind of backed down from a lot of her hard stances originally, especially on that the X group that she did. She took much softer stances, and she wasn't so authoritarian about the evidence she had.
Authoritative.
Oh, thank you.
Ron says, is Candace investigating Rob Reiner now? I thought it was Jack Frost. And Trump Briggs says Paramount Tactical is a Fed, which I thought people were going to say.
I think everybody's a Fed. We're going to get into Nick Shirley later, and there's evidence coming up that I like Nick Shirley, and I like a lot of the reporting he does, but I got a couple of clips that make me have questions now. Yeah, but I have also said consistently from the beginning, Candace Owens, I believe, is the Fed, Tim Pool, Nick Fuentes.
Yeah, you have an overarching theory of
I have an overarching theory that these people work for different intelligence agencies, and these intelligence agencies are warring with each other over the control of the conservative movement through social media commentators.
And Trent also says, I didn't see the X video, but want to. And then media is all left. We need non-sponsored media. That too. And I would even say non-sponsored content creators. So you can't get the whole, oh, you got paid 7,000, you got paid by who knows what. People that are able just to say, oh, I'm just being financed by my subscribers and being okay with that.
Yeah, and I'll say this.
But then audience.
I was firmly on Candace's side. I was kind of following both sides, but I was really going down the rabbit holes of the community that was surrounding Candace. That being said, the other side that I didn't watch nearly as much was able to convince me with real evidence. So what I would say, whatever side you're on, just keep an open mind and kind of keep an ear to the streets and see what the Candace side is saying and see what the other side is saying. And whoever has the best evidence will convince you over time. And I'm glad they're kind of having it out now, early on. And I think we're kind of getting to some conclusions here.
Critical thinking, and don't believe 100% of what anybody tells you online or in person, and also form your own discernment, your own judgment, and use your critical thinking skills, because we have lost them all nowadays. Tom says Alex Jones is a sellout to Israel along with Tommy Robinson. There's these sellout pieces of crap. See, told you.
Everything can't be Israel. That being said, I think Alex Jones has had a big change. That being said, the lawsuit of $1 billion, it's the largest private lawsuit awarded against put against an individual. I covered that trial. It was one of the first videos I made by myself on camera. It was hard to make. It's kind of cringe.
We were still in Canada.
That being said, yeah, I don't like the new Alex Jones, but I still do watch him. I still do like him, but he's not what he used to be, and I will say that. So.
But again, he got scared off, I'm guessing, a little bit because of the lawsuit.
Well, he can't make any real money.
That too. Hold on. Denise says, give one example of a time Candace doesn't correct something that has been disproven. Mitch Snow.
Well, I would say, Mitch.
All her allegations against
I would say
everybody?
Mitch Snow. I would also say she started making allegations about TPUSA and their financials. And
Charlie Kirk's family, Charlie Kirk's wife.
Yeah, and when you're making the allegations about the financials themselves, I mean, it just doesn't make sense why the Democratic Party didn't go after TPUSA, because they were the one reason that the conservatives and Donald Trump won that last election.
A lot of times she lies by omission, but at the same time, she makes allegations by letting the audience kind of connect it. She takes it to the most reasonable place for someone watching her to connect, and then just says, oh, I never said that. But she led everybody to water, and then they drank.
Well, and I will say this. I watched that entire side. I can literally tell you 10 different channels that I watched that go down different rabbit holes, some of the financials, some of the weapon, some other theories that they're trying to work out in real time. And I respect that they're working out in real time. That being said, Candace Owens was really slinging mud and making certain accusations that other channels weren't. Other channels were a lot more grounded. And I continue to watch a lot of these channels, and I have a certain respect for the ones that do stay a lot more grounded and really focus on hard evidence without making outlandish accusations that are later proven wrong, and then the goalpost has to be moved.
And those accusations might come because of the personal vendetta a lot of people are speculating that she had against either Charlie Kirk, TPUSA, all of them,
Well, my big thing with Candace.
So there's an explanation also as to why she would be doing this. There's no explanation on the other side.
I don't necessarily think Candace has a vendetta against Charlie. I still think they were friends. I know you'll think differently from me.
They were friends till 2018.
Me and you would disagree on that, but I will say this. I think her husband is connected to MI6 and the UK government, and so is his father. She has a lot of question marks revolving mainly around her husband and his connections to intelligence agencies, how they met, how they got married, and a lot of other things. I was bringing up these questions when I was supporting Candace a couple of weeks ago. That being said, like, a lot of people are coming around to the view that she does have connections to MI6, and MI6 has constantly gone after the Trump administration since 2016.
Denise also says she doesn't draw conclusions and she doesn't refuse to correct any mistakes. She still hasn't corrected Mitch Snow. She said, oh, well, maybe I didn't know those parts about him. But she never outwardly came out to say, oh, I shouldn't have let all my subscribers send money to him now that I know who he is. Maybe I'll try to get the money back. But no.
Yeah, and I was where she was a few weeks ago. Everybody who watches the show knows I was firmly on Candace's side. So what I would say to her is maybe watch the episode of Paramount Tactical with Robert Barnes, who is a tax attorney who knew Charlie Kirk and
who helped.
And a lot of the evidence they actually present, it's not about the evidence itself, which I think was actually good, but it's more about the general common sense. The Democrats would have went after TPUSA and absolutely shut it down if they had any impropriety. This is why Charlie was so above board with everything in the financials.
And why he wanted to do a Doge-style audit, specifically so they could even further become
more efficient,
cleaner and more efficient, in case they ever got attacked through their financials, which has happened, and Alex Jones is a great example. Non says Bill Clinton eliminated the Communications Act, and here we sit with 6 major media companies always shrinking. Foreign interests control media and government and buy TikTok and CBS and hire Barry Weiss.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that 100%. Right. I don't like Barry Weiss, but I also say there is a creep coming into independent media, YouTubers, what you think is independent personalities are actually getting bought up behind the scenes, and they're not telling their audience they've actually taken a buyout from major corporation and now they're owned.
Mm-hmm. Non continues, there is no left representation of any kind. Neoliberals and neocons that are all neocons in actuality shouldn't say media is left. That's just laughable. And then agreed, boulders of salt all around.
Yeah, well, I think the new conservative movement is, like, when you really look into the ideology, the new America First movement is really based upon paleoconservatism and libertarianism. And they're not pure paleoconservative values or libertarian values, but it's this hybrid that also appeals to liberals. That's why you see a lot of disenfranchised liberals coming over to this America First movement. And it's a great movement because it's not the neocon movement of forever wars. We have to support Israel no matter what. I mean,
yes. Denise says, did you see the account that made a video series on TPUSA's financials? I believe that would be Wolf in Finance. And yes, we both watched it.
Yeah, he's made, I think, 3 or 4 videos at this point. I've watched them all in depth. I've now looked at the side that was kind of trying to counter it. They weren't countering it in the beginning, and that's why I thought Wolves in Finance was absolutely fantastic. But after watching Robert Barnes, somebody that I've trusted for years as a content creator, now it's not to say I'm going to listen to him blindly, but what he said made absolute sense, not just with the evidence, but with the common sense approach he kind of took with it.
And also how crazy it is that Wolves in Finance is allegedly an accountant, and he didn't know that you could have a P.O. box as a to receive mail and to have that registered as the kind of business place, because that's where you receive mail, partially because of security reasons. Tim Pool explained this a month ago, but nobody believed him at that time. Denise says, Mitch Snow may not be a credible partner. Doesn't mean he wasn't at Fort Huachuca. Candace never said Mitch was a good person. She verified what was verifiable regarding his statement that he was at Fort Huachuca, and that's the games she played.
But no, what I will say about that, yeah, because I know all the evidence because I followed Candace. I still follow all those channels, and I will continue to follow it because I'm just so invested at this time. I'm going to follow it all the way through the trial. We may even televise the trial if it is televised. That being said, they were talking about, oh God, who was his security guard? Brian
Harple.
Well, yeah, Brian. He said he's seen Brian Harple there. They uncovered a officer that looks almost identical to Brian Harple. You can see their images side by side on a lot of X accounts. Maybe I'll grab it for tomorrow's episode. And a lot of people think this is the person he may have seen. So.
And hold on, Non says, I'm a leftist populist and currently find myself with a lot in common with America First. I am all about America First. And I think, again, those two ideas aren't fighting with each other. And we are also seeing it and seeing a more worrying trend of the two extremes of what could be thought of as the populism movements of the left and the right. The left with the insane Antifa types and the right with just insane right-leaning people, with Nick Fuentes saying that there might be a union, and the horseshoe theory coming all the way around and saying, well, we both agree on a lot of things. And I think the sensible people should say, that the ones that are a bit further down say, we also agree on a lot of things, and we're all also upset at a more global thing that's happening. Because again, it's not just in the US, and that's why we also cover a lot of other regions, because I think people in all the regions need to understand that it is still the globalist plan or agenda or whatever you want to call it.
When I say America First, and I'm really invested in the America First movement, I don't live in the United States anymore. I was born in Canada, lived I'd say half my youth in the United States. I now live in Mexico because Canada has gone absolutely crazy. But I'm so invested in the America First movement for the model, because I think that model of America First could be nation first. You can put any nation's name, Mexico First or Canada First. If they get a good model, not everything's going to work, but the basic nuts and bolts, if they work it out there, it can be put into Mexico to root out corruption and other things. Doge was a good element of the America First movement. That needs to continue. A lot of other things of the America First movement is currently trying to find its identity. Some of it is not the best way they're trying to find their identity. Other ways are absolutely good, but that conversation needs to be had, and a nation needs to have an identity, especially if they want to be nationalists and really have their politicians be loyal to their country, have their Wall Street and their business district be loyal to their country, and the economy should really evolve around the working class and farmers.
Because they're the ones that feed everybody.
So even if you don't have a good economy, but you have a stable economy for the citizens, you can still provide a good life for your citizens. It's not always about GDP. And with the world population shrinking, the capitalistic model of everything always has to expand is not necessarily going to work in the same way. So not necessarily putting your GDP first, but putting your citizens first may be the new model.
But also throwing all of capitalism away, the baby with the bathwater, isn't going to work either, because we have seen the other parallels of socialism, communism, and all the other economic models that have been tried that have ended up in misery. And capitalism, while now it isn't functioning because of all the reasons and many more that you described, is still, I think, the way forward, but in it with a different lens. For example, the tariffs.
I'm not saying, yeah, you're right with the tariffs. But what I would also say is, even with a different lens, or you have a different capitalistic model, model of capitalism, what's lacking in capitalism is a moral foundation. And when America was founded, there was that moral foundation. A lot of people within the United States or other countries have loyalty to other countries. Now, you need to have loyalty into the country in which you live. And a lot of the different districts or bubbles that work within that country need to have loyalty to the country too, whether it's Main Street, Wall Street, or anything else.
Yes. And quickly, Denise says, how is this a game? It's following a lead as an investigator should. And then says, gotta go. I will watch the recording later. Thank you for addressing my comments. I appreciate it. And thank you for sending comments as well. Again, we do like the conversation. That's kind of the whole point of doing a live. Otherwise, we do recorded videos. But.
And again, I've been kind of won over by the evidence to, I would say, TPUSA side, if it's a side. That being said, I'm still watching all the channels, and I'm more than willing to come back to that side if they have good evidence.
And there's still a lot of questions
They're not
left.
presenting good evidence at this point. They just keep moving the goalpost, and it's not what they're claiming it was.
And I agree, the investigation has been lacking. I agree that there are too many questions left. I agree we should know who else was co-conspiring with Tyler Robinson and the boyfriend, furry person. I do agree with all of that, but at the same time, just making things up out of thin air because you want an answer so desperately, or because you want to use the answers that you can come up with to take down TPUSA because you disagree with them on X, Y, or Z, or if it's Israel, if Candace Owens has some personal vendetta, that's where I'm saying follow first the truth and then go into the theories and see if anywhere, if you can actually make those theories work or not. But yes, that's my diatribe.
Okay, and we do have chapter markers. We're going to go into different subject matters.
Yeah,
That being said, it's the first time we're kind of using these
Testing all
chapter
of this.
markers and these assets. So if something goes wrong, please be forgiving.
Yes. And then Nan says, we are starting to agree pronouns and bathrooms just don't matter. Exactly. And I think that is one of the points where the progressive left and the insane left actually lost a lot of people, but then those people still aren't willing to go the full way into conservatism or into the right. But then where do those people end up? And then where do the people that, let's say the neocons, where do those end up? And I think they have a lot more in common, the more neocon types and the lefties that got left by the left. Those groups have a lot more in common.
Yeah, I think there's three different segments. I think there's three different segments from the left and the right where the neocons and the neoliberals will end up connecting, and they've traditionally been the two parties, the two-party system that has had the majority of the control
and the power.
You may see the far right and the far left come together in a horseshoe theory, and what you're seeing is the moderates from the left and the right also may come together, but these would be three distinct different types of ideology and things they want for the country.
And where does that leave America with its two-party system? I mean, here in Mexico, we have endless parties, but where does America stand if there's that actual division being fully created and formed? Nan says, I will be listening while I make dinner for my wife as she is on her way home from work. I love your show. Grateful for the algorithm. Thank you so much. And good luck making dinner.
Yeah.
I'm bad at cooking.
Okay, we're going to get into the...
hold on. Marshawn quickly says, America first, yes, but not America only. And Candace fibbed about the rooftop. Exactly.
Yeah, but we also have to realize America first is actually getting its identity right now. So there's a battle over what it is. And in the first section, we're going to kind of talk about that battle. The first section is religion. And we're going to go into religion, then health and Maha, then immigration. Then we're going to get into geopolitical countries such as the U.S., China.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God.
Okay, so religion. First and foremost, I mean, Nick Fuentes has been kind of at the forefront of this debate conversation as well. And we are seeing people on the right kind of being either fully for or fully against. But Kayzerev said, a correspondent at the White House talks about Nick Fuentes using F-word language and more. He also then challenged him to a debate.
And this is a Christian correspondent, but this is a neocon Christian correspondent and a boomer. This is not where the conservative movement is anymore. And you can just tell by the way he's speaking. So I just wanted to represent this before we get into the next fold of this.
Reporting for the Intermountain Christian News, I'm Dr. Matthew Anthony Harper, here at the James Brady Press Room of the White House. The top story today is the unresolved issue about Nick Fuentes. If you don't know who he is, he was the one that Tucker Carlson interviewed. He's a white nationalist, and there's a lot of controversy surrounding him. Nick Fuentes has stirred up a lot regarding his views, and Tucker Carlson hasn't distanced himself from him, or he didn't challenge him in his interview with Nick Fuentes. And Megyn Kelly has not confronted Tucker Carlson about the problems with Nick Fuentes, and especially that it hasn't been addressed that I have seen in media reports is about the matter of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy on the part of Nick Fuentes, that claims to be a Christian. He is on his Instagram page where he says that the phrase Christ is king, and then he uses the F-word language in videos. So hypocrisy about representing Christianity, because in the book of Ephesians,
okay, you can leave it there.
The Apostle Paul.
And I just kind of brought that up. That is the neocon boomer
point of view,
a traditional Christian point of view, and it's just outdated and it's not working. And if they don't like the way these people are interviewing Nick Fuentes, they need to interview him themselves. But it's not just Tucker that's interviewed him at this point. There's been different interview styles from Tucker to Piers Morgan,
Steven Crowder.
to Steven Crowder. I think Steven Crowder did the best job so far, but there's been a new Christian national, not a new Christian, but there's a major Christian nationalist channel that is doing a 10-week expose on Nick Fuentes, where they interviewing him each week about a different subject matter. And it's very interesting because I've always wondered about how does Nick Fuentes kind of coincide his idea of Catholicism with a lot of his political views, because they're in direct contradiction, especially when you look at the Pope leading the Catholic Church into globalism.
Especially after Vatican II, but also what the Catholic Church did in Latin America specifically, where we still have the aftershocks of that. But with Nick Fuentes, and I'll continue to say, I think he's a good diagnostician. For the longest time, I really didn't like him. I started watching longer bits of him, and I think he's also moderated himself a little bit more after he's gotten this notoriety back, now that he's allowed back on more social media, mainstream spaces that he wasn't before. And he was a boogeyman, more of a boogeyman before. Now he's kind of coming into his own and being able to speak, and people actually interviewing him and asking him things. But I think even though he's a good diagnostician, his prognosis and what he says should be done, the prescription, is where he falls apart, especially if he wants to either unite or be the leader of the Christian nationalism movement, because a lot of the other Christian nationalists, and we see it in that interview that you mentioned, I watched a little bit, a lot of them are fully on the side of the Catholic, the old side of the Catholic Church shouldn't be involved in America at all, which is how America was founded. Catholics were actually almost banned from America at its founding.
Yeah, let's go into the clip that we're talking about, and we'll talk a little bit about it, because that dynamic of this interview was extremely interesting. I highly recommend anybody to watch it that hasn't watched it. And although I've seen this channel in the past, I haven't watched them in long format. I've only seen their clips, so I didn't realize they're actually an extremely Christian nationalist in their view. And I'm glad that I found their channel, because now I have a source to know what the honest view of Christian nationalism is, meaning they're not trying to water it down. If you don't like what they have to say, they're still going to say it. And I didn't agree with a lot of what he was saying. I agreed far more with Nick Fuentes. The Christian nationalist interviewer did so much talking in the interview. It was almost like he was interviewing himself, but he did make Fuentes look like a little bit of a liberal, because he was so far right compared to Fuentes. Let's go into the clip though.
Kaiser Rav says, quote, Nick Fuentes explains why he's willing to be more liberal when it comes to enforcing religious law on blasphemy and pornography.
Maybe I'm more liberal than you. I don't know what the penalties would be specifically, but I think certainly the government needs to enforce some level of morality.
Yes.
Within reason. And I think what you're talking about when you say the perpetual indulgence, these are deliberately subversive, morally subversive. There's no positive good where that could be defended.
Right.
I don't know that I would outlaw, let's say, heresy, because there should be room for religious debate. It's like there always has been in the church or at different councils and things like that. But something that is deliberately and intentionally meant to blaspheme and offend God and the morals of any decent person, I don't think there's any basis for that. And so, of course, in America at the same time, we have a tradition of freedom of speech. But maybe we need to articulate what the basis of free speech is. Why is free speech good? If free speech is good insofar as we could debate about what form of government is best or what kind of society we should have, I'm willing to be more liberal when it comes to things like that. But filth, which is like pornography, for example, what action? That's not political speech.
No.
And I don't think there's anything positively good. I don't even actually consider it speech.
It's not religious speech either.
No.
Although I have seen some Jews say that both abortion and pornography are Jewish religious sacraments.
Which
to
is
them.
interesting.
Very interesting.
So I tend to agree. I don't, like I said, I'm probably not as conservative when it comes to religious law as maybe you are, or some Protestants, or even for that matter, some traditional Catholics who say there should be no freedom of religion, which is, I think, what you're saying. But I certainly think that there should be some basic standards like they have in Russia or any other country.
Okay. And it was such a good interview because he was a Protestant, Nick's a Catholic. They really flushed out in a safe environment where Nick Fuentes didn't feel like he was under attack. So he got to give his honest views, and there were real questions. And I think that's really going to expose Nick in a lot of ways that other interviews don't, because he's asking questions to him that normal interviewers just wouldn't ask in good faith. And I'll tell you what, I did not agree with the interviewer on a lot of things. Everything was the death penalty with him. And Nick Fuentes came right out and said, I don't really believe in the death penalty. I would maybe have it, but I would be really reserved about it because I've been an enemy of the state before, and a lot of people are put away under false conviction. He also said more people should be locked up. But that being said, this is a 10-part series. Every Wednesday, they're going to come out with a new part of this. I think it's going to really reveal Nick Fuentes in a much different way. And the channel itself is a Christian nationalist channel. And before they started the interview, they were really putting Nick Fuentes up as the possible president of the United States in the future, meaning quite a few years down the road. And if he's not president, he will be the kingmaker for the Christian nationalist side. And it's very interesting that they're being very honest and transparent of their views and what they think Fuentes is going to be in the future.
Do you remember what the channel's name is? I didn't want to do that to you, but because
I don't think it was the right name, but the logo on it was NXR.
Yeah, but
But
because I don't have it, but just asking.
Why don't you keep talking and I'll look for it real quick because I did watch it. I was just watching it.
We have also seen, and especially in this section of religion, we just talked about several ways that the Bible is being banned in different countries. Also Nicaragua and Latin America, for some reason, communism, they're banning the Bible there, but also in Canada through hate speech laws, they're trying to ban at least segments of the Bible and other religious texts there. And we are seeing an actual concrete attack on Christianity specifically, but religion more broadly. But sometimes also from other religions.
It's called NXR Studios. Okay. So again, I find myself not agreeing with the host on a lot of things. I am sympathetic to Christian nationalism, but not necessarily in his vision. Mm-hmm. That being said, I'm glad he was so honest on his vision of Christian nationalism because it's hard to get a lot of Christian nationalists to be honest about their views and what they actually want. They tend to water it down for political power. He's not, so I'm going to continue to go back to that channel to understand the Christian nationalist point of view.
The more extreme.
The more extreme, yeah. I also watch Black nationalists and other extreme perspectives just to understand the political playing field.
I just think in general, extremes never work out on either side. But
yeah, but sometimes there's really good ideas. And
exactly.
And some of those ideas actually come into the mainstream, and those sometimes are the best ideas.
Mm-hmm. When implemented properly. But as I was saying, there have been attacks and actual literal attacks. And we saw another church burning. Again, we did live in Canada. I lived in Canada for 13 years. I'm from Mexico. But there we saw about 200 churches, more than 200 churches by now being burned down in acts of overt, obvious political violence, in my opinion. But also over the week.
Yeah, we're still in the religious section. So the next few stories here will be on religion. This just happened over the weekend. There was another major church burning. I believe this happened on New Year's. So of course they're bringing in the New Year's the wrong way.
Yeah, not over the weekend, but over the break. Ollie London says, quote, historic Amsterdam church destroyed after going up in flames on New Year's Day. Vondelkerk Church was destroyed after the spire began burning shortly after midnight. Officials said the church cannot be saved and is no longer salvageable.
And we come from Canada where over 200 church burnings has happened. This is an acceptable thing in countries like Canada that there is a war on Christianity. This does not happen to mosques and other things. And if it does, it's extremely, extremely rare and usually unintentional. Okay, and I just wanted to kind of bring up the subject of church burnings and how they're happening on a global basis, especially in Europe, especially in Canada. So,
and attempt at continued destruction of just one religion because it doesn't happen. In other ways, for example, Judaism is being attacked as well, and I think is being used by Islam as an entry point to go against everybody else because according to Islam is the only religion that should be allowed.
But Christianity is far too nice. And that's the thing.
That's what I was trying to get
They don't push back on a lot of this. The new Christianity, everything's love, everything is okay. There's a harder strand of Christianity that is starting to develop, and a lot of males are being attracted to this, and there needs to be some pushback on this war against Christianity.
Well, it's also an older strain than if we remember. Catholicism before. But From Libs, and this is an example, from Libs of TikTok, Unreal, ChatGPT will create images of a gay Jesus, because that's always allowed, but will not generate a similar picture of Muhammad. ChatGPT admits it's a double standard, not based on fairness, but to minimize harm and avoid high-risk content. When asked about what the risk was, ChatGPT says it won't make pictures of a gay Muhammad because it's afraid that Muslims will retaliate with real-world violence.
Even artificial intelligence is scared of the Muslims because of what they will do, so they won't make pictures. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous, the double standard. If you're going to have this double standard, you need to get rid of Islam in a lot of these Western countries, so there's no longer a double standard. I mean, they're burning down churches. They're making threats if you even draw a picture of their prophet. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. They're bringing in Sharia law. We cover these stories on a daily basis, but the fact that there's such a double standard in Christianity is the religion that bore the West and really built a foundation to get rid of slavery, and a lot of people forget that.
I do want to read what it says. The predictable real-world harm is, as historically, depictions of Muhammad had led to strong real-world reactions, including threats, harassment, and violence, not because the depiction itself is violent, but because it is perceived as a grave provocation by some individuals. We know which individuals. Platforms, therefore, treat such content as high risk, not abstractly controversial. This isn't about approving those reactions. It's about recognizing that the risk is well documented. The consequences can extend beyond the person who generated the image. So the policy aims to avoid creating content that has a predictable chance of triggering real serious harm.
Yeah, and
And so, like, even ChatGPT knows what would happen and why.
Yeah, I'm very much against censorship, but that Bible burning and flag burning and images I don't necessarily think are free speech. I don't know if they should be included there. I would be okay with the standard being taken away by just having AI not create pictures like that. And this is one of the few instances I would say, okay, that would be the compromise. But otherwise, you're going to look for more societal degradation by putting Muhammad kissing dudes as well. So you have to, we're going to have to figure out what are the lines, I guess. Now, I am pretty a free speech absolutist. That being said, I don't necessarily think imagery is free speech. I mean, I'm willing to be convinced differently on that. You seem to think differently.
Yeah, I think free speech is everything. Until you're actually...
So it's the reason imagery... Hold on. The reason imagery is considered free speech, it was because of the landmark case with Larry Flynt and Hustler magazine that pornography was free speech. So you agree pornography is free speech?
Yeah. I'm not making a moral claim on it, but yes, I think free speech ends once there's an enactable call to violence that can be enacted within the moments after the speech is done. Other than that, everything should be fair game.
Okay.
And how you patrol and control society shouldn't be through restrictions of speech. It should be through morality and understanding what morality is. But we are entrenched now in at least Western world that is completely morally, it's all moral relativism. And we do have someone that also speaks about it. From Coworker of Truth says, moral relativism is a devil's masterpiece in our age. The lie that truth changes with feelings, culture, or convenience. It denies the infallible teaching of the church on faith and morals, leading souls to perdition under the banner of tolerance. Those who spread those errors, whether clergy, theologians, or lay influencers, are doing the work of the enemy, inviting the reign of the Antichrist.
Okay, let's play the clip.
I was trying to get my
If it's really long like that, you don't always have to read the whole thing.
I know. I was trying to get my headphones on.
Bishop Sheen, do you foresee in the distant future any change in the church's stand, the Catholic Church's stand, and certain issues today which have been quite controversial?
And if there's anybody listening, this is a very, very old clip. It looks from the 60s or 70s, so it's interesting to see the take back then. But let's hear what the priest had to say.
Certainly abortion has been. Do you foresee ever any change in that?
No.
Not at all?
No, because we have no power over the divine law. Right. Furthermore, suppose we did. Suppose John Paul II tomorrow said, all right, bring out your contraceptives. Pull out your scalpels. Unplug the children from their wombs. Marry as you please. Unmarry as you please. Fornicate as you please. What would be the difference between the church and the world?
Bishop Sheen, do you foresee?
Okay, and I think that's important because liberalism right now is trying to put the skin suit on of a lot of different Protestant denominations. And you need to be kind of forewarned of this, because just because you walk into a Christian church doesn't mean they're going to actually prescribe to actual Christian values.
But funnily enough, also it is dependent on the country, because in my Spanish show, in Nat and The Guy in Español, go subscribe there too. I do a live in Spanish after this one. There, I have a subscriber that's called Walker that lives in El Salvador, and says that there, the Protestant churches are the ones that are fighting back against the Catholic churches getting all woke. And in Canada, we saw it's basically all of them. But it is different, I think. And in the States, I do think it's going in through the more Protestant branches, other than, but also Catholicism, because that's trying to go global. So
yeah, well, I would say whatever church you go in or whatever social media you listen to, go in there wary with a grain of salt. Don't just believe anything somebody's going to teach you because it's the church or because you trust a certain social media influencer. Always be a skeptic, because you can always be convinced later. I mean, with the Candace Owens situation, I was convinced later, and now I've come over to the other side.
Kind of.
Okay, let's go.
I mean, I'm still open-minded on the Candace Owens thing.
Sure you are.
I mean, if she comes out, she was completely right all along, and there's a big conspiracy, then I'll be like, okay, I was wrong about that. But until then, with that last clip, I think the most important was the moral foundation that has been lost to moral relativism, and anything can be whatever you want it to be. And there is no morals, because if morals come from the government and whoever is in government.
Well, and if the morals come from the government, they can constantly shift. And we've seen this happen during the jibby jab era. And that's when a lot of people kind of woke up. And I think that's why you're seeing this resurgence into Christianity. People are hungry for a non-moving moral foundation that is separate from the government, that can put boundaries on the government when the government goes too far out of bounds. And I might not be a Christian myself, but I would subscribe to a Christian doctrine for society, so we can have a non-moving moral foundation, so the government doesn't get to dictate what's right or wrong and change that constantly.
And that is what, I mean, at least I always say, I'm not religious, but I understand, support, and defend the need for some sort of higher power, higher order that does that. And religion is the only one that has worked historically.
Yeah.
So religion is Western religion is the one that should do it.
Okay, let's go from religion to health and Maha.
Oh, we're moving on. Okay.
Yeah, we're moving on.
Should I read the comments about religion?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If we have any.
Yes, we do. We have quite a few. Hold on.
Thanks for all the comments, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Really helps the show go a long way.
Yes.
We're still a very small channel. If you're not subscribed, please do so. But I remember when we used to get no comments, and it was just like, story, and it had no real flow. Yeah. Now it's a conversation between us and the audience. I love it.
Yeah, eventually we will bring it up somewhere on the screen for the comments that we're reading. We're working on that.
We've actually downloaded a program that can bring the comments up on screen. We just have to test it out over the weekend.
Figure out how it works. Marchon says, Marchon maybe, I don't know, says Candace fibbed about wanting to know about Charlie's burial place, then lied to Piers Morgan by saying that it was the other loudmouth, can't remember his name, it's the guy that was once gay, Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, and I think he's responding to the other viewer that said, name one instance where Candace has lied. There's a couple instances. I gave a couple instances, and it's not necessarily she lied intentionally. She was just maybe mistaken, but that can be taken as a lie in the eyes of the general public.
Then Trembrigg says, Guy, but he means the guy, the White House correspondent, doesn't even know who Nick is. Exactly, and that's the problem too, that a lot of these people that are more neocon, more what they want to keep the power structure that they have, mostly of them boomers, don't understand the Nick or the phenomenon of Nick or the diagnosis that he's making, or even the tone at which he should be taken at. They're taking him, in my opinion, way too seriously, and they've created a boogeyman out of nothing.
Yeah, I mean, conservatism wants to keep the voting bloc, the Christian voting bloc, well under their wing, and it's breaking away to the America First, especially with the youth and Nick Fuentes. Mm-hmm. So it was very interesting to see this interview with Nick Fuentes and how they literally put him up as possible future president or a kingmaker within the political sphere, especially the Christian nationalist political sphere, and they didn't mince their words about it. I absolutely love the interview. I'm going to watch it every Wednesday, and I recommend if you haven't seen it, to watch it. I mean, the interviewer does talk a lot, and I think they probably paid Fuentes quite a bit of money because they're going to get a lot of subscribers because of it. But he's also able to put this Christian nationalist perspective, his view of Christian nationalism, being the interviewers, kind of out there, because Fuentes has a much different view of Christian nationalism than the interviewer.
And Marchon says, "Ustedes hablan mi idioma?" Yo sí. Asking, do you guys speak my language? I do. I'm from Mexico, so mexicana. We live in Mexico now because we came back from Canada. I lived there for 13 years. And we do have a Spanish channel called Nat and The Guy in Español, where I do Nat en Tu Idioma, which is me speaking in Spanish, doing a similar show, but just by myself because the guy is still learning.
Well, I don't even know if I'm learning. I have a bad memory, so I have a hard time, yeah.
Marchon says, how can I support your channel? Subscribing for now.
Yeah, if anybody wants to support the channel, we're almost to monetization.
And it's free.
We're trying to get to 1,000 viewers, so every subscription really does help. And I love comments as well, so you're already helping us by commenting.
Exactly. And because our Spanish channel used to be our English channel, and that one has quite a bit more subscribers, still trying to grow it, but that one kind of we focus more on the first year. Marchon says, I think you're talking about pre-Vatican II Catholicism.
Yeah, and that's, I would say, for me personally, I like Catholicism before Vatican II came into effect. I think that's when the church went really progressive, and even after that, they became very globalist in nature with the last few popes. And I think a lot of people within the Catholic faith see it the same way, but they're not willing to have a schism. They're hoping for a better pope, maybe.
Marchon says, so happy I found this channel. Thank you so much. And also says, what makes Islam somewhat pernicious is that it's both religious and political. Exactly. And one of the goals is to have a theocratic state.
Well, and it doesn't mix with the Western culture. We already see right now they have a very small population in these Western countries, yet they're trying to completely take over, and they're just not. It's like mixing water and oil here. And on top of that, I mean, what's going to happen if they do get full control? We see this already happening in London with these voter blocks in certain cities, and they're getting a lot of political control. They're trying to bring in Sharia law. It's a religion of control and dominance, and that's going to kind of show its face in the political sphere, and especially in London.
Hold on. Non says, I post all of it on IG, but now I don't know what that means. What that comment was about. I think maybe one of them.
Okay, let's just keep going because we got a lot of sections to get to.
I know. Hold on. No, hold on. Marchon says, pre-Vatican II was not very nice to the Jews.
Yeah.
None of them are very nice to each other. 70 years ago.
All religions and people don't have to play nice with each other. It becomes a problem when you try to forcefully mix everybody together. Especially when a lot of people have different allegiances to other countries other than the one they're living in.
Marchon also says, ¿Cómo se llama su canal? What's your Spanish channel's name? Nat and The Guy Español. So the same name as this one, but just Español. I'm going to say wig, because I don't know if YouTube's going to get mad at me. Candace says, Candace Owens is a chaos agent. She keeps getting support from two pro-Russia part of the GOP and Alexander Dugin himself.
Yeah, I'll disagree with that a little bit. I think it's definitely coming from MI6 and the UK, and they've tried to undermine the Trump administration from the beginning. I think, I won't go too far into it, but I listened to a lot about Alexander Dugin, and I would say I listened to everybody, and all of his ideas aren't necessarily bad.
And thank you, Marchon, for saying that you'll spread the word. And now, yes, we are finally moving on to health, which I think isn't that long of a section.
No, it's a short section. It's health and Maha, but it's a regular section we're going to start covering on the show. Yeah.
But the greatest danger of all would be to do nothing.
That one didn't come up to us. There we are.
So we try to program the things.
Yes, we're kind of working out the kinks this stream.
Okay, let's get into the first story here, though.
Yes. So from Matrix series says, quote, an American filled a cancer prescription in America. Same pill, same dosage costs the pharmacy $7, patient pays $17. When Medicare pays, that exact same pill costs $2,400. That's not healthcare. It's a rigged pricing machine.
Yeah, and before we get into the actual clip, and I think this is an important clip because I think this is happening in a lot of different places in the world, but we called the section Health in Maha, not because it's necessarily about making America healthy again, but if that model works in America, which it's working very well, countries like Mexico and other countries with similar systems to the United States can possibly bring it into their country and refine it even better. And we can have kind of like an open source dialogue where we can get rid of corruption and hopefully fix the medical system.
And the issues that Maha highlights are also important with seed oils, microplastics, etc., hormones.
My wife and I own this pharmacy, and we're a cost-plus pharmacy, which means that we don't take insurance. We just charge the price of the medication plus $10. This medication is called imatinib, and it costs us $7 to buy. We add $10, so you're out the door, $17 with your cancer medication. When Medicare pays for this drug, however, it costs them $2,400. This drug was filled 250,000 times in 1 year for a total of $600 million. So why are they paying this much for that medication? Well, insurance companies pay a middleman, the pharmacy benefits manager, and that person decides how much that medication is going to cost. Will that medication be covered? All of those questions go through the pharmacy benefits manager. And this person doesn't get paid just a flat fee. They get paid a percentage. So their incentivization is to raise the cost of the medication. If every one of those scripts was filled at our pharmacy instead of through Medicare, it would have cost $4 million. That means that we are $596 million cheaper than the insurance.
Okay, that's good.
Crazy.
And that being said, I mean, there's a lot of talk of what's going on in Minneapolis right now with the Smallies, and they're saying that's the biggest scam in history. Well, I would say, yeah, it is a huge scam, but the military industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industrial complex are probably far larger scams that have been going on even longer. And none of this corruption is acceptable. And a lot of this has to do with politicians in bed with the military industrial complex and the pharmaceutical or medical industrial complex.
Mm-hmm. And it's good that people are, I mean, they had already kind of woken up to it, but even more now that Maha is becoming more talked about in mainstream.
Yeah,
and RFK is there as well.
Yeah, it's one thing to wake up to it, but there's a leader within that movement, and it is RFK Jr., and he's doing a great job so far. I mean, I was really hard on him in the beginning of the administration, but he was really setting the groundwork through documentation, through different research studies that he actually got legitimized so people wouldn't be able to kind of debate him when he put evidence forward in order to get rid of a 72 vaccine schedule. Mm-hmm. And he got it down to 11, which is much more manageable and much more acceptable. Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's it for health. So I'll quickly read. We got like 2 comments on that. Wig says, are they Canadian or not? I'm confused. So I'm from Mexico. I lived for 13 years in Canada, then came back to live in Mexico.
And I was born in Canada, but lived a lot of my life in the United States. I lived in over 20 states. I moved back to Canada. That's where we met. The Canadian government got completely authoritarian under Justin Trudeau, and it's continuing to go in the same direction. So we decided to move to Mexico, where you were originally from, and luckily we were able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot
4
more
years of saving up to be able to do it. But.
Yeah, there's a lot more freedom through chaos here, and nowhere is going to be perfect, but Canada's going in the wrong direction right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and non-specified what the Instagram thing was. Says, I break ChatGPT's safety censorship regularly. I treat it like a game and got the highest score. Guess I didn't mention that before I said IG, almost entirely about Israel.
Yeah.
Funny.
Okay, let's go into the immigration section before we go into
hopefully it works.
Individual countries.
Yes.
The immigration policies in Europe are a disaster. You're destroying Europe. You're destroying the culture of Europe.
Oh, it worked.
Oh, it worked. Great.
Again, we're just kind of testing these out, but they'll be regular. But yes, immigration. Starting with France. France and Britain. So from Britain is broken, quote, French police threaten British stop the Bows activists with arrest. It makes you wonder why they would want to arrest people who are doing what the authorities are meant to do.
This is an absolute crazy story because the police are going after the wrong group here. I mean, let's watch the story and then we'll talk about it a little bit.
News exclusive. We can reveal that anti-migrant activists who travelled to France to stop the small boats are now facing arrest. They include those from the Raise the Colours movement, which has carried out what it describes as civilian border control or Operation Stop the Boats. Now, videos show them wading into the sea, shouting at migrants and slashing small boats. They go into the sand dunes and things and find the boats and slash the boats, etc. Obviously, what they are trying to do is to stop those boats being used to import illegal migrants into Britain. But GB News can reveal that they now face arrest in France, which senior French politicians, apparently, they're furious about the situation. Well, a source close to Minister Laurent Nunez, who is the equivalent of the Home Secretary, told a French newspaper that he demanded that the members of these groups, these Brits, going over there to slash these boats, are identified and arrested. Well, I'm joined now by the International Security and Border Control expert, Henry Bolton, OBE. Now, look, Henry, I'm at pains to say it.
Okay, and the people are starting to do the job the government should actually be doing, and not just in France, not just in Britain, but in the US and a lot of these Western countries. The government themselves are failing the people and doing the exact opposite. A lot of this looks intentional to flood the UK with these migrants. And they started a legal scam, meaning for every illegal that comes over in a boat, they get sent back, and then 2 legal migrants get to come in legally through the front door, which makes it very, very hard to actually get rid of them. It's almost better to have an illegal migrant so you can forcefully remove them rather than having illegal migrants you have to have legal justification to remove. The EU, the UK, France, I mean, these countries are intentionally flooding these countries.
And at least we are seeing the conversation kind of going more mainstream, to call it that way, or at least more people willing to say things up front instead of, talking around them and not stating the actual true facts, and also debunking a lot of what the left and those that want to import their entire population instead of encouraging their local population, their native population, to actually have more children, which would be ideal, is that it's to fix labor shortages, for example.
Yeah, but one thing I'll say here is they need to come up with a new way to run a capitalist model. And because just constantly increasing GDP while you increase the population and the population wages go down, but the country's GDP goes up, isn't going to work. That benefits the elites, not the citizens. People want the government to fix the country in a way that benefits the citizens, where you don't have to bring in massive amounts of migrants.
But yes, so Peter St. Ong talks about this. Peter St. Ong says, quote, "Mass migration does not fix labor shortages, it makes it worse." Guy has left the building. The reason is migrants reshuffle labor. We end up with too many low-skill workers and a brand new shortage of doctors, dentists, and school teachers.
While Donald Trump moves heaven and earth to deport illegals, Democrats and Republicans in Congress are issuing a stream of bills to allow more migrants into the country. At least a dozen this year, including a so-called Dignity Act, a DREAM Act, bills focused on farm workers, construction, and even a Bracero 2.0 Act for seasonal workers. The common thread is they claim to fill labor shortages. So this has it completely wrong, because migrants do not fill shortages, they reshuffle shortages. We get too many low-skilled workers when we already have too many, and we get precisely equal new shortage of high-skilled workers who clean their teeth, teach their kids, and do open-heart surgery. Now those are actually in short supply. To illustrate, let's say you annex Canada as the 51st state, Donald Trump's dreams come true. Now, you don't instantly have millions of Canadians lined up looking for work, because they already have jobs in Canada doing stuff for other Canadians. Now, what if you skip the country and just import all the Canadians? Same story. Losing the land actually makes it worse. So day one, they're roaming around the bus station looking lost, but give it time, and they're still effectively occupied doing stuff for each other. Zero labor shortage solved, just more people. Now, in the case of Canada, it doesn't reshuffle wages because Canadians are similarly skilled to Americans, about 70% white collar. But if you import, say, Guatemala, it's very different. Now you have a massive oversupply of low-skilled migrants and a precisely equal shortage of high-skilled workers 1-for-1. Now, this is fantastic if you happen to be high-skilled. A million cheap nannies and lawnmowers, not a one who competes your wages down. In fact, they compete your wages up, since the Guatemalans didn't bring any dentists with them. But it's rough if you are blue-collar, millions of low-skilled workers competing your wages through peanuts. Plus, you wait months to see a surgeon, and your kids are packed 50 to a classroom that does not speak English. Now, to be fair, there is such a thing as a good reshuffle. You import high-skilled migrants, say hundreds of German surgeons or Japanese engineers, you get a healthy surplus of surgeons and engineers with a new shortage of low-skilled workers to mow their lawns, make their Starbucks, and babysit their kids. Point being, immigration only works economically if you are cherry-picking the absolute best, say the top 0.1% of people who want to come here. Now, this is eminently doable, considering literally billions of foreigners want to come to America, Going by the natural experiment of Puerto Rico, where nearly 2/3 of the population has now emigrated to the mainland, extrapolate that to the rest of the world, and perhaps 5 billion foreigners would come here if we unwisely let them. So it's Sex brought to you by I Trust Capital.
Okay,
If
and that
low-skilled
being
migrants
said,
contribute.
what he's talking about is a controlled regular immigration program, which a country like Canada used to have. They used to be the immigration model for the world. Other countries used to go there to study them, and then they just opened up the doors to mass migration, and it undercut wages, sent property values through the roof, which politicians absolutely love because they're invested in real estate. In real estate in Canada, it's an absolute scam. But controlled migration, while you end illegal immigration, is the way to go. At this point, they've allowed so many illegal migrants into these countries. They need to create a complete moratorium on immigration and figure out how this economic model is going to work.
And we also, I mean, exactly. I mean, he was oversimplifying it, of course. That,
Yeah.
You know, import all Canadians, it's all going to be great. But it was the way it used to work in almost every country. And the US was and continues to be, well, not right now, but has continued to historically be the country that lets in most both legal and illegal migrants. And I think the demand for most of the countries should just be get us people that will actually better our society. Why should we have, as citizens, have to pay for other people to come here and live even more comfortable lives than we do? I mean, we saw it in Canada.
Well, let's remember one more thing. If illegal migrants weren't able to vote, because in a lot of these blue states, you don't need a voter ID to vote. If they weren't able to vote and they weren't able to get on the census, meaning a state with more illegal migrants, they actually count those illegal migrants and give them outweighted vote potential and things of this nature. That being said, if you just made it so illegal migrants were, number one, not counted into the census and not allowed to vote, the Democrats would come around to illegal migration is not a good thing either, because that used to be their position for decades, for the majority of that party's existence. They've only recently begun to play power politics through illegal immigration.
Yeah, the incentive would be completely gone. But also, and who was it? I think Lotus Eaters today. Another argument is there could be more enforcement and laws made so people don't want to. I mean, so they don't receive the benefits, so they don't receive even better things than local citizens do. And that could also stop, because that's where you would see where the interest in actually immigrating lies. If it's to get free stuff, or if it's to actually go to a society that you can help improve because you're high skilled or you're able to bring in something that that society needs.
Well, yeah. And number two, if you cut off illegal migrants from getting benefits until they're citizens, that resource of benefits can now go to the actual citizens, and there'll be a lot less resentment towards people immigrating into the country.
But yes, there is a lot of, and I'm glad for it, there's a lot of talk as to what makes a citizen, what makes you Irish, what makes you British, what makes you American, Canadian, etc. And I think that is a conversation that has been even taboo, well, it shouldn't be, for the longest time. And I'm glad it's at least coming up, even in the conservative circles where you couldn't ask it either.
It's coming up because this idea of America first, and that's where it's coming up. And that's why it's in the zeitgeist right now. And it's a good conversation to have. And that's why the conservative movement, which is becoming the America First movement, is actually going to be the party of the future, or the populist movement of the future, because they're having the difficult conversations right now where the Democrats are sitting over there, the same old Democratic Party, and nobody's questioning anything, because if you do,
they're bringing in insane ideas.
That's heretical. I mean, the Democratic Party runs politics more like a religion, and that's how they got wokeism.
And if they do ever get back in power, we will see the US go more towards what we're seeing in the UK and the rest of Europe. And like, for example, from Concerned Citizen, quote, nurse says we have no choice. We're told to do it and we have to do it. Nurses and doctors told to prioritize migrants over UK citizens. According to NHS whistleblower, which is their national health system, as British people have to wait weeks and months for healthcare. In Canada, it's up to years that people have to wait for healthcare.
Money. I told them my symptoms, and they said, "Yeah, the first appointment's in 3.5 weeks." And I thought, "You've got to be joking," you know. And you know, the system is.
But once again, I don't want us to sound like we're just ranting off about one topic. But migrant hotels, where the doctor comes in every week and the dentist comes in every week, and you are looked after properly. I mean, that's what upsets people about all this, isn't it?
Yeah, and so unfortunately my uncle passed away just a couple of months ago, and I was in hospital, and I was speaking to a nurse, and she knew me, which was a very weird dynamic because my uncle just passed away and she was asking for a photograph. But we were in the hospital and we were having a chat and we was talking about the migrants actually. And she said, you know, we get told that we have to look after them. They come in, we have to do their health checks. And I said, well, doesn't that frustrate you? Don't you want to like, and she said, we have no choice. We're told to do it. We have to do it. You know, and I find that really depressing. I find it really depressing that the nurses don't even want to in most cases, and they understand it's unfair. And, you know, she said to me that they do get preferential treatment within the hospital sector, you know.
And this is the issue. The elites are running the country in a way the citizens don't want it run, and they're not asking for the opinion. I think they're assuming they can flood the country with so many illegal immigrants that illegal immigrants will be the majority of the vote, and then they no longer have to listen to the regular citizens. What?
I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
If we have any questions, we'll do the questions before we go into the U.S. section.
We have one more. Do you want to go to that one or no?
Oh, we did?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do the last one then.
Okay. I'll just read it. Hold on. From Amy Mack says, quote, meet Amy Pope, the UN official engineering mass migration. Listen to how she explains the entire scam out calmly and out loud. Our number one goal is to harness the benefit and promise of migration. I just like to intro it a little bit to have context.
Our number one goal is to really harness the benefits and the promise of migration. And it's my belief that when we work together with communities, when we work together with governments, we can start to build out ways to find opportunities for people who are on the move rather than just treating the issue as a problem to be solved. Now, that's not easy work. There's a lot of work to be done. It requires engagement of our member states, but it also requires engagement of partners from different sectors of society. So, for example, I believe there's so much more work we can be doing with the private sector, recognizing that the private sector benefits when migration is well managed. It also means working with...
And this was the traditional scam of migration. Conservatives loved illegal migration because they would hire these illegal workers into corporations and repress wages, benefiting the corporation but hurting the citizens. And they're continuing to they're saying it out loud. This is what they want to do.
Civil society. It means building an ecosystem where vulnerable people on the move can find opportunities, and the communities where they ultimately go can benefit from those migrants who ultimately land there.
It's also the language she's using, on the move.
Well, these migrants the country that needs these migrants the most is their home country. They need to fix their home country, learn from the models of other countries, like what they're doing with the healthcare system in the United States with MAHA. It's being reformed. A lot of other things from a lot of other countries that are good working models need to be implemented in these countries that aren't working. And rather than try to implement them, they're taking the hardest working people, the youngest people, the best people from that society, and transplanting them into a Western society, which is absolutely leaving those original countries crippled.
But also where a society where they are not even told to integrate, but have no incentive to do so either. There's more incentive to continue to join the enclave that you're from, instead of actually moving and fully integrated to the society and the country that you supposedly want to be in. But if it's just for economic benefits, if you're not, running away or an actual asylum seeker, etc., if you're just doing it for the economic benefits, then that becomes very clear as to why you wouldn't integrate, because you're there just to reap the benefits and so nothing. Okay, I'll read some of the comments. We don't have that many for this one. Wig says, the UK and the European government are against its own people. It's pathetic. And that is why we continue, and I guess you explained it better, but the whole America First thing and saying that we are for America First is because I am, for example, also for Mexico First. And I think it's the model itself that should be at least thought about in other countries. Britain would greatly benefit from it. But I think not even their current, both conservative and other parties that are potentially on the right or more on the right, are even thinking or even trying to go that far, which I wouldn't say is not far enough.
Yeah, a lot of places like the EU, like the UK, want to use identity groups against each other so they can assert their agenda under a national identity, which is kind of being worked out under the America First movement. It's a lot harder to manipulate a kind of a unifying identity. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then, hold on. March On, still not sure. It says, mis tíos y tías son de Parral, Chihuahua. Her uncles and aunts are from Parral, Chihuahua. I like the cheese from Chihuahua. Chihuahua cheese. It's good for quesadillas. Okay, so now we're moving on to, not Mexico, but the US section. Let's see if this one works. And so the first story is continuing down this kind of same line that we've been touching. From Eric Doherty says, quote, boom, JD Vance to the radical left says, if your movement is telling you to commit acts of violence against people for speaking words you don't like, number one, you're evil. Number two, you're engaged in a terrorist movement.
Well, and this is mainly, I just picked this clip of JD Vance. It's a recent clip just to kind of open up the discussion on JD Vance. There's a couple things we need to discuss going forward with the Future America First movement or whatever direction they go in.
The militant transgender movement, is that a domestic terrorist threat? If you are encouraging people to commit acts of violence against the United States government or against your fellow Americans, absolutely, you're involved in a terrorist movement. I don't know enough about that particular organization, but what you increasingly see, Jesse, is you see people in the trans community and other members of the far left who are saying they are so threatened by negative rhetoric that they must take arms and attack people. If your movement is telling you to commit acts of violence against people for speaking words that you don't like, number one, you're evil. And number two, you are engaged in a terrorist movement. And that's part of what we have to root out in the White House. And this is very important, Jesse. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I talked to Stephen Miller probably 7 times in the past 2 days. We are working very hard to ensure that the funding networks for left-wing violence, that the radicalization networks for left-wing violence, that if you encourage or fund your fellow Americans or anybody else to commit acts of violence because you disagree with political speech, you are going to be treated like a terrorist organization, and we're going to go after you. I'm glad we have transparency.
Okay, that's pretty good. And I kind of wanted to bring this up because I do understand the criticisms of JD Vance. He came out of nowhere. He's got connections to Palantir, to Peter Thiel. Those are the big question marks. He has kind of tried to address those straight on. So at least he's addressing them in public speeches where he has a question and answer segment. That being said, as far as I can tell, he's the best candidate as of right now for 2028. And if people like Nick Fuentes or anybody else wants to kind of knock him down, I'm okay with that. And I'm okay with asking questions, but you got to put somebody else up. And who the only other person they have that they're putting up, it's like, let's knock down JD Vance and it's going to leave the door open for Gavin Newsom. And that's just going to sit.
Or Marco Rubio, which would be the same.
Yeah, or that's going to sit the country back 10 years to either a traditional neocon or Gavin Newsom, which I don't like. JD Vance is the best we got right now. If you want to knock him down, put up a better candidate or suggest who a better candidate is. We typically cover Nick a lot on the show. He is vehemently against JD Vance, yet he's refusing to put up somebody else in their name. And what that does is take down the conservative movement overall and puts in somebody like a Gavin Newsom who will really on day one undo everything Donald Trump has done. Donald Trump has ruled through executive order. What that means is if a Democrat gets in 2028, it takes 1 week to undo every single executive order and put the United States in a worse place it was than it was before.
And right now, the U.S. for the rest of the world, at least the rest of America and Europe, the American continent and Europe, is the stopgap that is actually proving and showing and willing to stop the madness that we have been seeing and that is just creeping into Latin America. For example, I talk about it a lot in Spanish. And the U.S. is giving that example of how to at least partly get rid of it. Of course, they haven't gotten rid of it 100%. But if someone like Gavin Newsom or Marco Rubio, I mean, yes, Nick can stomp his little feet all day and say, I don't want to vote for JD Vance. He's terrible. Don't vote for him. But then exactly put someone up or otherwise the whole West will be lost. I mean, they say they care so much about the West, they care so much about American Christian values, etc. But then they're denying the one person that could at least continue the project until you find someone you would be willing to put up.
Well, he also did the same thing against Vivek Ramaswamy, and there was nobody else up. We talked on the last show. There's finally an America First candidate to go up against Ramaswamy. I'm going to be interested to see if Nick Fuentes actually supports him because Tucker Carlson does. I actually like the candidate. I forgot his name right now, but he's a traditional YouTuber that designed a car that does 105 miles to the gallon off of diesel fuel. Very interesting story he had. We covered him on the last episode, but at least they're putting up another candidate against Vivek. That being said, if they don't like JD, they need to suggest somebody else.
Yes. And because, funnily enough, we know there continues.
There was one more thing. I took a story out of there that was supposed to lead into the JD Vance story, and that was on New Year's Day. Mondani took control of New York, and we had a ceremony in there. That being said, if it's not J.D. Vance in 2028, it's either Newsom or somebody like Mondani, who's a socialist.
And who also, during his celebration, did the same, I will say, hand salute that Elon Musk was accused of doing. And there's nobody talking about that, even though that ideology is way more similar to the Germany in those times. But we also know that something that is dangerous during elections specifically is voter fraud. And right now, almost all eyes are on Minnesota because of one type of fraud. But I mean, of course, consequently, there's many more.
And we're going to talk about the Minnesota fraud. I actually was going to go in depth on this, but I brought up Nick Shirley in the next clip. And I do like Nick Shirley, but I am going to have to report on the next story. But we'll go into this one first.
From Eric Doherty, quote, Scott Pressler just found potential massive voter fraud in Minnesota. Again, aren't we surprised at all? Minnesota allows one person to vouch for 8 migrants so they can vote as part of the same-day registration. No proof of residency or voter ID is required.
And again, when we're looking at this fraud in Minnesota, and I look at the Maha movement, I'm looking about the modeling of it. What's being done to kind of expose the corruption that's happening in Minnesota can be replicated in not only other states, but in other sectors other than healthcare and daycare, because there is a ton of fraud going on in all these sectors within all these states, and other countries can learn from what happened, what Doge did. Doge went from its own kind of independent network. Now it's embedded in each institution, and they have their own Doge division. And now what we're seeing is independent media kind of hone in, build YouTube channels off of this, so independent journalists can make a living by exposing fraud. This creates a decentralized way to really root out fraud at every single level. I'm loving to see what's going on in Minnesota so far.
Administration is staggering. Well, outside the margin of victory. Joining us now, conservative activist and early vote action founder, Scott Pressler. Scott, welcome to the program. You're on the ground a lot, and you love registering people to vote. But this is concerning. Not only are they doing it same day with an ID, without an ID, but they allow other people to vouch for other voters.
Yes, I want to be very clear. This is according to Minnesota state law that with vouching, no proof of residency is required. No photo or voter ID is required. If we were all living in the same neighborhood, I could vouch for you, Lawrence, and say, I know Lawrence, I know Will Kane, and just simply my vouching and you guys signing an oath declaring that you are following the law, you will be handed 2 ballots and you will be able to vote. And if I have 6 other friends that I vouch for, my one registered voter in Minnesota could get 8 voters. Now, what's even more concerning, and you just said this earlier, is that if I were an employee at a residential facility, according to state law, I could vouch for unlimited voters by simply showing proof of being an employee at the residential facility. And so thanks to Nick Shirley, we are now exposing potential fraud when it comes to our election system.
So, Scott,
okay, and this is the important thing about this. As much as I'm upset about the fraud that's going on in Minnesota with the Somali community, there's a bigger picture here, and that's you don't need a voter ID in a lot of these blue states to vote. And coming up into the midterms and in the 2028 election, if we can piggyback off of this Somali corruption that's going on and start focusing on election corruption in the state of Minnesota, and then broaden it out to other states and figure out a model that works, that exposes election corruption, which they're kind of doing here, and bring it into other states to change the law, it's going to make a huge impact. I was talking to a liberal friend, and they were absolutely shocked that a lot of states in the United States, you don't need any voter ID to vote. And that's why a lot of these blue states are blue and will never change. Until you change voter ID laws, I don't see you making a big impact.
And again, that has been, I mean, even in Mexico, you need a voter ID, a specific voter ID, so you're able to vote. So for me, as a Mexican, and also in Canada, you still do need some kind of ID. I mean, they're trying to relax it and that they don't really pay attention. But for me, it's always been insane that in the US, and that it has been used so blatantly as a mechanic to be able to get more people to both vote for you and to also change the state that you're in, and to continue the destruction of several states like California, Minnesota.
Well, yeah, and how they
etc.
got these policies in originally and constituted them as law, they went off the back of racism. It's racist to ask a black person to have a voter ID because it's too difficult for black people to do that. That's a ridiculous argument. It seems like that's a racist argument on its face, to think a black person can't go get an ID.
It's the classic bigotry of low expectations of the left, and that is how a lot of policy has been made.
Yeah.
Which should, if anything, enrage those that have been set with low expectations.
Black people are 100 are just as competent as everybody else, and they can get a voter ID. And they're the ones being affected by a mass illegal migration into their states because
by
a
the
lot
benefits
of it,
given to those that,
Yeah.
that get there.
Okay, let's go into
because you talked about Nick Shirley.
Yeah, let's go into the next story. We'll kind of give a little bit of a background on Nick Shirley. Even though I do like him, my general overall concept is a lot of social media influencers are working for intelligence agencies. I think a lot of things are currently being exposed about Nick Shirley. I was just watching something earlier. Just even if he is working for an intelligence agency, I still like the reporting he's doing. I'm going to continue to watch him. That being said, I'm going to take things with a grain of salt. We're going to show a clip of a previous story he did, and it raised a lot of questions, so I dug into him after that. And he works with the Mormon Church previous to having his station. He went to Santiago, Chile. If people don't know, it's open source material from the CIA. They like to recruit from the Mormon Church, and they typically recruit just before they go on these missions, like to Santiago. After he got back from Santiago, which he talked about on the PBT podcast, he directly started his YouTube station, and he started going to really political hot zones that I think they wanted to get into the mainstream media. You're also seeing the administration kind of follow a lot of his reporting around and acting on it. A lot of the corruption that was going on within the Somali community was actually reported on over 6 years ago. And recently, the State Department, as early as about a month ago, before Shirley reported on this, reported there was $9 billion leaving of fraud within the Somali community. And a lot of that was being given over to Somaliland, which is not actually Somalia. It's a break-off state from Somalia, which Israel's now currently building a military base in. But there's billions of dollars being funneled to Somaliland. And it's very interesting because they're planning to relocate a lot of the Palestinians to Somaliland. There's already been a contract signed. So I don't want to go too deep into conspiracy theory. That being said, going back to Nick Shirley, he was reporting on a situation in the Ukraine war, and he was exposed by a content creator he did an interview with that was actually from Ukraine. We'll watch that clip and then we'll talk about it.
And I mean, personally, I do like Nick Shirley. He is very young, but again, I wouldn't be surprised if, again, he is compromised in some way because he did get really big. But at the same time, he does have very good reporting. He came even to Mexico City, near where we are, to talk to migrants that were, stopgap. He did a lot of reporting on immigration as well. And I do think that reporting is valuable, and he is valuable as an independent journalist, citizen journalist, whatever you want to call him. But if he is compromised, then again,
just take it with a grain of salt. And certain intelligence agencies, I agree with their missions. I mean, I think he's really connected to Trump intelligence agencies or the divisions of the FBI and the CIA that are more loyal to Trump. So I'm more sympathetic to his reporting. And you can kind of tell that by this Ukraine story and the spin he was trying to put on it. That being said, there was one other point, and that is his mother typically goes around with him to all these places. The CIA typically recruits from the Mormon Church or recruits from the Mormon Church a lot, and they also recruit intergenerationally, meaning parent to child. And it looks like possibly his mother would be his handler, teaching him the ropes, and it would be very interesting.
But this would all be speculation.
Yeah, it's all speculation.
Again, same as with Candace.
But
take everything with a grain of salt and discern for yourself as well.
A lot of other channels are reporting on this right now, so I thought I would bring it up. And he is still a good reporter, but I will point out this one story here.
From Callan, quote, I confronted Nick Shirley about his lies in Ukraine. He pretended there was no war. He said his reporting was satire. JD Vance now calls him America's best journalist. Important to remember, this was not just a daycare. This is a country where people are being
And there's one more
UNBV
thing.
data.
What you're seeing is a lot of Shirley's stories being massively pressed by social media and then the FBI falling in behind. So it's giving the FBI an excuse to go in, which is a good thing, especially if you're weeding out corruption. So even if he is an intelligence agency and they're pushing his stories, so the FBI has an excuse to kind of go in there harder than they normally would, I don't see it necessarily being a bad thing.
Nick Shirley came to Ukraine and made this video. And I'm talking about this right now because the vice president has literally just said that this guy is the best journalist in the world. But that doesn't quite add up, because when I confronted Nick about what he did here in Kyiv, he said what he was doing wasn't journalism, it was satire. And his entire reporting started to fall apart. Look at this. So here's the caption you put up. $175 billion goes a long way. This is the capital of Ukraine. What was the idea of the original tweet?
To show that what is happening in Ukraine, and to show that people are still living a somewhat normal life in certain areas such as Kyiv.
Well, I think what you were doing is to try and show that there maybe isn't a war in Ukraine. You were basically trying to ride the sort of Tim Pool grifter type wave, saying, you know, pulling silly faces, smirking at the people of this country, saying, this is where your tax dollars are going. You cannot avoid that. That's what you were doing. Why can't you admit that?
Because I do not believe by making satire on the internet commits a crime by any means.
Okay, and I just want to say this. He is really shifty right here. This guy has him caught in a situation. And the backstory here is when he went to Kyiv, he had handlers that literally brought him away to different bombing sites in downtown Kyiv. And he made it look like Kyiv wasn't under attack. I'm very sympathetic to the fact that Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, and I don't think we should be funding them. So I'm actually normally on Shirley's side. But the reason he can't admit that there was no bombings going on is because there's video evidence that he went around to these bombing sites. So he knows he's caught, and the only way out is to say what he was doing was satire. Nobody thinks what Nick Shirley is reporting on is satire, but he knows he's caught because he was given handlers within the country.
Going back.
This is a huge revelation. So you were actually doing satire.
In that post.
So it was satire.
Is there anything wrong with satire?
Okay, so you're telling me now that this was a joke and it's satire and this wasn't your actual reporting. This wasn't you being a journalist.
What do you mean?
Well, you were being satirical, right? You were joking. You're saying that this tweet was satire. The original report that you put out on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter was satire.
That was the first video I put out. And if you continue to follow me and watch the videos that will be coming out, you will very much see.
No, I've seen the backtracking, but why didn't you make it clear that it was satire?
Isn't that very obvious that it's clear that it's satire?
And just to recap on what Nick actually did here, he came to the Capitol, he pointed at some luxury cars, some cafes, people living their normal lives, and insinuated that there's no war, or that it's exaggerated, or that your American tax dollars are going on people's luxury cars in this country. And when this video went viral, I contacted his fixers. I found the exact people that brought him into this country, and they told me they showed him a bombed children's hospital. They took him to various aftermaths of missile strikes, of missile attacks, and he decided not to include it in any of his TikToks, in any of his reporting in Ukraine, because Nick came to Ukraine to make propaganda, to be provocative, to be a MAGA influencer. And that's fine. There's plenty of people like that on YouTube and TikTok. When you come to a country where people are being bombed every single day,
there. And this guy that's talking against Shirley here is giving propaganda to the other side because I've covered it since the beginning. Ukraine is extremely corrupt. America should not be funding another forever war. Europe wants to get them into that war. That being said, I wish Nick Shirley would have maybe done what Donald Trump Jr. did and went to one of the other countries where it's nothing but Ukrainian license plates on a lot of these luxury cars and reported that. He was kind of caught because he had handlers into the country, but that's what originally made me go down the rabbit hole of look into what his connections may be to intelligence agencies. And then again, if he is connected to intelligence agencies, I still do like the reporting. And it does look like the FBI is coming in off the back of Shirley's reporting to expose the corruption. But as long as the corruption's being exposed, I do like it. That being said, there is a thread here to a lot of the Somali money being funneled into Somaliland. And that's where they want to put the Palestinian, the Palestinians right now. So it's very interesting.
And again, just take it with a grain of salt. And we were talking about potentially Newsom being the runner-up candidate for the Democrats, which would, it makes the most sense, unfortunately. But let's actually see what he's done up to now. From Kevin Kiley, quote, a third of community college applicants were fake, 17 billion, and again, this is about probably fraud as well, spent on high-speed rail with no track, 24 billion in homelessness funds disappeared, 32 billion was lost to unemployment fraud, Medica and SNAP are rife with improper payments. That's
and one more thing I will kind of say here. That model they're doing in Minnesota right now to kind of expose the Somali fraud can be replicated in a lot of other areas, and social media influencers, I hope, start digging into California, Gavin Newsom, and the fraud that's going on here. But learn from Nick Shirley. He was kind of caught in a lie there. Stick to the facts. Don't exaggerate stuff, and don't try to get people kind of riled up emotionally so it sticks to a narrative. I still like Shirley. It was a mistake, so hopefully he learns from that in the future. But I hope social media influencers start digging into Newsom and California right now.
Now, the latest example that we've learned is that over a third of community college applications in the state were fraudulent. These were not real people.
And I went to community college in California for a short period of time. And California is a very unique state because Ronald Reagan came from California. And what he did was pay lower income individuals to go to college. So they actually pay you to go to college, which is interesting. But that makes it absolutely ripe for fraud.
People, not real students, actually seeking a spot at one of our community colleges. What they were instead were scams.
Has been reported on over the past several months. Kiley noted the people were found to be individuals committing financial aid fraud, costing more millions of dollars of taxpayer money, according to the California Community Chancellor's Office. I talked to Kiley just yesterday about the recent California State Auditor's 2025 high-risk report. It warns multiple state agencies still face serious problems with waste, fraud, and mismanagement, including the Employment Development Department and Medi-Cal. The report also adds social services to the high-risk list, warning CalFresh errors could cost California billions of dollars. The auditor says hundreds of millions and potentially billions of taxpayer dollars are at risk.
Okay, and that's good. And going into 2020, I really do think Newsom's going to be the candidate. I hope people start digging into California corruption under Gavin Newsom. The recent debacle that happened with the fire on every single level was mismanaged, and I believe Gavin Newsom is most likely filling his pockets at every single step. And he needs money for an election campaign against J.D. Vance, and I think he has it because California is ripe with fraud. That being said, we're going to do one story from each other section, just because we're kind of running out of time.
Okay. So are we done with this?
We're done with the U.S. section. We're going to go into Canada now.
Sure. Let me just read some of the comments. We don't have that many right now. Hold on. Wig says immigration moratorium is needed. America is full. Europe is full. Anyway, Happy New Year and be safe. Thank you and Happy New Year as well. I mean, Mexico is about to be full as well. They're now bringing in more and more asylum seekers, and the UN is clapping at Claudia Sheinbaum's government for saying we're going to bring way more people in that we can't even manage our own people.
Well, you, me, and everybody watching thinks that these countries are full, but the elites and the people that are running the country don't. Why? Because they want to increase their GDP, even if it's going to hurt all the citizens in the country. As long as GDP goes up, they can continue to shovel money into their pockets. So it's very important that if we do stop immigration, we're going to have to change the model of the economy that benefits the citizens at the core. This is the working class. These are the farmers. The model, the economic model itself in which we're working under is going to have to be looked at. Trump is already doing that, and he's trying out a new system, which is the tariff system. I really hope it works. So far, so good. But other countries, their model is just flood with immigrants. They'll bring money in, and it will increase the GDP and the work output.
March On says, I wouldn't mind a Rubio-DeSantis ticket. Rubio for foreign policy and DeSantis for domestic policy.
Yeah, I used to really like DeSantis. Too many deep state ties, especially when he ran against Trump. All of his money, everybody that was in his staff was deep state. Rubio is a traditional neocon. The fact he is in the administration to keep the neocon wing under the Big Tent movement so they don't give Trump any resistance. I really do not want to see Rubio in there. I think another forever war will be coming. That will be the European war with Russia. Rubio is completely on board with pushing that thing forward. I think Vance is the only thing kind of keeping that at bay, along with Tulsi Gabbard. I like Tulsi Gabbard. I like RFK. I think they've really proven themselves in this administration, so I don't mind seeing those two. I do like DeSantis in a state role as governor.
Because everything that and the new ideas and good policies he's trying to implement in Florida, actually make a good kind of roadmap for other states that want to do similar things. And without him, I think there's almost no state trying to do similar things to what Rubio has proposed, to what DeSantis has proposed, or even started to put forward to actually implement. So he is way more useful as a governor and as an example of a governor actually governing properly.
Yeah, and what we see going on in South America with Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, they're putting a lot of pressure on them. Hopefully that works out. But if that thing goes sideways and there's a forever war there that becomes something like what was in Afghanistan, where everybody's blended in with civilian population, it's not going to be good right on America's border. Rubio's the one pushing that. I hope things work out, but Rubio's the neocon, and I don't want to see him be president, period.
It's interesting because Marchon said they have some kind of connection to Mexico, at least, and I do see a lot of Mexican conservatives being very pro.
Yeah,
Rubio.
they're very, but a lot of people do not know Rubio's history. He is a traditional neocon in the traditional sense. There will be forever wars. He is loyal to the military-industrial complex.
And Rafa says,
good to see you, Rafa.
Hello, happy Now Year. Hello. I am replying to you on Instagram as well. I haven't forgotten. But hope you're doing well. Let us know how your New Year's went. And I'm finally back tonight in Spanish as well, because I abandoned everybody.
Yeah.
Marchon says, although it's still kind of too early to, like Marco, to decide who would be running.
Yeah, and I will say this. I absolutely hate the neocons, but I do understand they hold a lot of power. And until they age out, they're going to have to probably stay within that big tent movement. But what you want to do is not have them create forever wars. So keeping Rubio in a high-ranking place within the administration maybe keeps the neocons at bay, and maybe that's what happens with him.
Wig says GOP needs to fulfill their promises they made during the election. It's GOP's responsibility to put a better candidate. No mass deportations, no end to H-1B, no end to foreign wars. Gay. And then Wig also says, so Russia is not corrupt? I guess it's a question for you.
Well, Russia is definitely corrupt, but I don't want to see a forever war with Russia. Europe has wanted this war with Russia for decades now. That was always their plan, to cash in on the $71 trillion within Russian natural resource assets. That was their way out. That's how they're going to get back on top of the world. Trump is throwing a monkey wrench into that because I think he wants to create economic ties with Russia. Europe is trying to do everything to stop that. So are the neocons within his own administration. I think a Russia-U.S. alliance would be a good thing overall. And I think it would, I think it would put China in a really hard place as well.
That too, but I don't know if right now a lot of people would be on board with that.
Well, I am.
Marchon says the only problem is Rubio and DeSantis are from the same state, and then says, because we both said we kind of don't like Rubio, at least not what he's shown now. But I understand from Latin America why he is so well liked in Latin America, and because of the hard stance that a lot of other politicians in our countries haven't taken that they should.
Yeah, as of right now, the best candidate I see is J.D. Vance. I'm open to other suggestions, but I do understand the criticisms of him. But the people that are criticizing him are not putting up a better candidate. And until they do, I'm going with J.D. Vance. Just like I'm going with Trump. Not that he's going to save the world or save the United States, but he's a stopgap because the country would have been completely woke. It would have gone in the direction of Europe, and the stage would have been set for that to become permanent. Digital ID, digital currency, and everything else. Now, I understand Trump is rolling that out, but he's not rolling it out under this globalist system.
Mm-hmm. But now let's see a country that is rolling all of this out and is essentially crumbling itself over, and our former country, that is Canada.
What's going to Canada here?
Yes. Hold on. Yes. So from Tracy Wilson says, quote, solid message from Mark Ledwell for Prince Edward Island. We can protect public safety at the same time we protect our rights. Ledwell votes to stack up with Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Yukon in protecting his constituents against the gun grab, which is being highly contested right now in Canada.
The greatest threat to public safety in Prince Edward Island is impaired driving and increasingly illegal drugs and organized crime, not the 7,300 Islanders who are trained, licensed, and legally own firearms. Licensed firearm owners in PEI are law-abiding and responsible citizens. The PEI government, including municipalities, should not participate at all in the federal gun buyback program. Full stop. I'm a candidate to be the next Premier of Prince Edward Island. As Premier, I will stand with law-abiding firearm owners, and further, I will introduce legislation to restrict the operation of the federal gun buyback program in in our province. To make this happen, I have tremendous support from the owners of the Big Boot Gun Range, and I need your support by January 16th. Even if you've never joined a political party before, please join our team at ledwellmark.com.
Okay, you can leave it there.
It'll take a minute.
And I put this clip up there to kind of show there are certain strong provinces like Alberta, like Saskatchewan, like a few others that are kind of trying to stand up to the federal government with these gun grabs. The gun grab that's happening in Canada is actually happening all over the world. It's happening in Australia as well. What they're basically doing, they've done it once already where they put over 300 guns that are now banned in Canada. Then they put another 250 models of guns on at the beginning of this year. They're just going to ban all guns, so the only thing left is BB guns. Canada per capita has more guns per person than the United States does. They have very little gun crime because they have responsible gun ownership. Rather than reward that, they want to punish legal gun owners and take their guns away. One other thing I'll say about Canada right now is over 30% of Canadian provinces are currently discussing leaving Canada. It's more fractured than ever. This would be Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Quebec. And behind the scenes, BC is also talking about it because if Alberta separates, BC is going to be cut off from a lot of the rest of Canada. I support
But I would say BC would be one of the hardest ones to actually convince the citizens because that's where they're most sheep-like. That's where we used to live in Vancouver, Canada. But I don't see that happening.
Well, if Alberta does, then I think a few years later, there's a good chance BC would. BC has a lot of natural resources and can survive on its own, just like Alberta. Quebec is talking about separation, and they have a big vote coming up in just a few months. And it looks like a separatist group is actually going to take control of the government in Quebec, and they'll probably want to actually take that to a vote. The problem with Quebec is they actually get a lot of remittance funds sent back from Alberta. They take more from the federal government than they give. The problem is Quebecers actually think they give more than they take. So if Quebec actually separates, they're going to be in a very hard place financially, and I don't know if it will actually work out for them. They might want to think twice about it, but Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC are in a very good place if they want to separate. Also, if Alberta and Saskatchewan separates, Quebec's not going to get all those remittances sent back to them, all those billions of dollars. So they're going to be in a very tough place after that.
And I'm still on the doubtful side that this could even happen, that the vote could even happen, because there have been a lot of stopgaps put by the federal government, but also kind of in support with some of the people that run Alberta to say, okay, we do want to stay in Canada, we just want better conditions. And we have seen this kind of bait and switch of Danielle Smith, for example, saying, we do want to demand the federal government start taking us into account and taking us seriously, but let's stay in Canada.
Well, also, if Pierre Poilievre wins a snap election, that might put an end to a lot of the separatist talk, but I think it might be too little too late. I don't even know if Pierre Poilievre can save the country at this time. He's not conservative enough for me. That being said, I don't think they'll necessarily go forward with a separation if he gets in there. One other thing I was going to say was,
even to try to change Canada right now, it would take more than a generation to be able to do it. So even if Pierre Poilievre gets in, it's going to take years, decades, in my opinion, to actually implement the changes that we're seeing, for example, in the US.
But I will say there is a lot of hurdles being put in front of Alberta for separation. I hope it does go through, and they are supposed to go to a vote later this year. But one place that's very interesting is BC, because property rights for individuals is currently being taken away. You will own nothing and you will be happy is actually becoming the model in BC. And a lot of people are actually talking about it's going to be easier to separate from Canada than it is going to be able to repeal a lot of the things that are currently happening in the court system with private property laws for individual citizens.
So do you want me to go to the next country?
Yeah, let's go to Australia. Then we'll go to the EU.
Let me find Australia.
Sorry, we're happy to skip forward on a lot of stories.
Yeah.
We'll probably go to 8:45 tonight.
Okay.
Because I want to try Rumble.
Okay. Are you and Bailey? Let's go to Australia. Yes, and we have just one, I guess. Australia story quote: "The People's King Elvis says it should be interesting, even though Julie Iman Grant works for the Australian government. She's still a U.S. citizen. I'm looking forward to see how this plays out."
This is very interesting. This has to do with the United States as well. But this is the United States and Donald Trump trying to protect free speech. And I hope they start going after EU officials in the same way.
The chairman of the US House Judiciary Committee has written a letter to e-safety Commissioner Julie Inman-Grant requesting she appear before a committee. We go live now to Kira Hain. She joins us. What did it say, Kira?
Julia, this is the letter that was sent by Jim Jordan to Julie Inman-Grant, Australia's e-safety commissioner. You can see it's dated December 30. Now, this is the second letter that he has sent requesting that Julie Inman-Grant travel to the United States, that she appear in front of Congress and give her voluntary testimony. Now, this relates to Australia's social media ban on under-16s, which came into effect earlier this month. To explain sort of the overarching concerns that they have, the United States is investigating how foreign laws could affect and potentially damage free speech in the United States. I'll read you an excerpt which explains in a bit more detail the concerns that they have. It says, "We are concerned about the extraterritorial content moderation requirements of Australia's Online Safety Act, eSafety's attempts to mandate global content takedowns, and your collaboration with a US university and other foreign governments to design and implement a global censorship regime. Moreover, new documents indicate that eSafety harassed American companies ahead of the implementation of the social media minimum age law." Now, as I mentioned, this is the second letter that's been sent to Julie Inman-Grant. The first one was very similar, explaining those same concerns, but this one a bit more stern, really reiterating that request. Here's a clip of Julie Inman-Grant responding to that first letter that was sent to her in November.
During the letter, it's voluntary, but I do note that it's interesting that there's discussion about using extraterritorial powers to consider bringing me to the U.S. when I'm being targeted for using extra.
Yeah, and this could result up to 4 months in jail and a huge fine. Right now, it's voluntary, but they can request that she does go back there because I believe she is a U.S. citizen. And if that is the case, there's already a precedent set by the Democrats with Steve Bannon for choosing not to testify.
Territorial powers.
Another key difference in this second letter, Julia, is that it does also mention that additional steps to obtain compliance with the request could be taken. Now, what those steps might be, we might have to wait and see, depending on how the eSafety...
We can kind of leave it there. That being said, this is an ongoing battle that's happening between almost all the Western countries against the United States. Donald Trump is pushing back with the Granite Act and really going after individual politicians. The future of free speech, I think, really lies on Donald Trump's back.
Mm-hmm. And just before we move on to the EU, I'll read from Wig says, "Godspeed our Canadian brothers and sisters. Not fair what is happening to them, and neither to the Australians." None of the Commonwealth countries are doing well right now, and I do think it is the kind of the testing grounds for the more globalist agenda, if you want to call it that, because we've seen it, and we've seen things implemented in Vancouver, Canada, for example, years before they were even talked about in the US, and that became an issue, but people were already trained into compliance and silence way before Americans. And I think that was the one, and free speech, saving grace of America, that more people were able to stand up and to even realize what was being done to them.
Well, we've been talking all episode about different models and how hopefully a lot of other countries learn from the MAHA model or the America First model and try to come up with something of their own. But within Canada, a new model between the government and the citizens can be kind of had here. If one province can separate or demand separation, it really changes the paradigm of how governments see their citizens. Citizens should control the government. Right now, the governments think they're in control of the citizens. And I think that paradigm changes if governments start taking back their own countries and saying, well, we don't want to be part of this if this is how you're going to treat us. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go into the EU now.
Okay. Hold on. Still getting used to this.
And we have chapter markers. She's just trying to figure out how to do them. The first story. Actually, let's go to the second story.
Okay. Hold on. Hey, there we go. From Britain is Broken, quote, "The UK government is advertising military jobs on Xbox. I logged into my Xbox just now, and there is a job advertisement for all roles in the Royal Air Force. Don't know about you, but using Xbox to target children to join the army just doesn't sit right."
And you can play the clip real quick.
This one?
Yeah, anyone's fine. And these are different jobs that are available through the military in the UK. Okay, that's good. I just kind of wanted to show it. They want to pump up their military right now because they want to press a war with Russia. I think their plan is to wait Donald Trump out, and hopefully they're hoping to get a Democrat or a neocon in office to press a forever war. There's very few candidates I would actually trust not to start a forever war on Europe's behalf with Russia. J.D. Vance is the closest thing we got at this point. It's one of the defining issues of the 2028 election. Are you going to take us to war or not? And obviously every single candidate's going to say no, but the EU is preparing for war right now.
And a lot of the plans that come through that would be able to be realized through the war would be, for example, digital ID, digital currency, and further censorship that what they have been able to implement.
Well, there's no jobs in the country. They know the youth does not want to fight for that country based upon how they've been treating their own citizens for the last decade. So I don't know how they're going to get these recruitment demands up. That being said, I guess they're going to try to do it through Xbox. Okay, let's go into Nigel Farage now.
Oh, I closed it because you said only one story.
Okay.
I closed them all.
That's fine. Let's
Do you
go
want me
into
to find it?
Huh?
Do you want me to find it?
No, I want you to go into the next section then.
Okay. Let's jump over quickly to the Middle East now. And we have been seeing, and we were talking about how much AI-generated clips are also coming out from this story. But from 7 News Melbourne, quote, hundreds of Iranians have taken to the streets in the biggest challenge to the Islamic dictatorship in recent memory.
Well, and we haven't been on the air since Monday. So this has been in a developing situation. I think we may have reported on it slightly on Monday. I was waiting. It's really hard to know what's actually going on on the ground in Iran. There's been a ton of fake AI videos coming out on this situation. The Western media is trying to make this look like it's far more dramatic than it is. The real clips that I can actually find, they don't look so dramatic. Yes, there are protests. Yes, people are dissatisfied. Also, a lot of old clips about previous protests that have happened in the country, they're trying to refile as it's a new uprising happening in Iran. I think the government's going to be able to keep it under control. I think the West wants to form it a color revolution. I don't think it's going to happen. Just like it's kind of failing in Venezuela right now.
Hundreds of thousands of Iranians have taken to the streets in the biggest challenge to the Islamic dictatorship in recent memory. Now the regime has struck back with deadly force as the world holds its breath.
Day 5 of fire and fury in Iran. Women defying the threat of jail or lashing, partying without hijabs to rock music in the streets. Others tore down security cameras. In defiance of the regime's mass surveillance, the uprising began in the holy city of Qum, one of the most powerful cities in the Republic of Iran, where traditionally senior clerics have supported the system.
A lone protester covers his face but refuses to move. A significant act of defiance in a country where dissent has been met with swift and deadly force.
The demonstrations now spreading to outer provinces where thousands are enraged by the sinking economy. In the past year, Iran's currency has lost nearly half its value against the US dollar. Inflation has forced food prices up by 72%.
In the past, people worried about affording meat and fruit. Now they are struggling to buy basic items like rice and eggs.
And again, take everything that's coming out from Iran with a grain of salt. I'm seeing some social media influencers report from the ground. It's not what the mainstream media seems to be saying. Yes, there are protests. I don't think it's as big as it is. It does seem to be confirmed that a lot of the protests are because of the collapsing dollar, and that part of the story seems to be the basis for a lot of these protests. So it's not necessarily against the regime itself. It's because of what's happening with the economy. I hope you didn't close the other two stories for this section. Okay, good, because I wanted to go through these.
Okay. From Bricks News, quote, Justin, Israeli cybersecurity billionaire Shlomo Kramer says it's time to limit the First Amendment. We need to control all social platforms and take control of what they are saying.
Yeah, and the next two clips we're going to show is people coming out of Israel, and they are having a hard line on censorship and freedom of speech. They do not want it right now, and I don't think that's the proper stance to have. I think this is why a lot of people may be turning against Israel. I think, a lot of reasons. Yeah, but this is not a good stance to have if you're trying to get cooperation from the rest of the West, especially from the Donald Trump administration, when free speech is so important.
I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it, and quickly before
Pause
it's
it.
too late.
What do you mean?
Play it from the beginning there. I didn't see that part when I grabbed it.
What do you mean?
We need to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it. My ass. The First Amendment is the First Amendment. Free speech is free speech. This is absolutely ridiculous. If he is an American, he's obviously an American immigrant, and if he wants to take free speech away, he needs to be kicked out of the country.
I know it's difficult to hear, but it's time to limit the First Amendment in order to protect it, and quickly before it's too late.
What do you mean?
I mean that we need to control the platforms, all the social platforms. We need to stack rank the authenticity of every person that expresses themselves online, and take control over what they are saying based on that ranking.
The government.
The government should
control the social media.
I know it's difficult.
Even
to
the
hear,
mainstream media was surprised.
Are
He's
you
like,
sure?
you can't say that. That we think that, but you can't say that.
Yes.
This is not the way to get the general public on your side. Even if they want to go after these policies, go after them in private. Stating this public is going to foment even more distrust than has already been earned over the last few years. So,
but we're also seeing that, again, this whole censorship machinery that we're seeing in Australia, the UK, apparently also suggested by someone from Israel or with Israeli connections, is all part of the same exact plan. And one of the most important things of the internet that we should protect the internet with is anonymity. That is incredibly important, not just in the US or in Canada, but elsewhere where people can be persecuted for what they say and where free speech doesn't actually exist. In Mexico, for example, I think there would be way more citizen journalists and people actually speaking up if internet anonymity was fully ensured and protected, but it's not. And we do see a lot of persecution from the government to people that report the truth and actually show what's happening on the ground.
yeah. Okay, let's go into the last one, and it's actually related to that clip that we just showed there.
From Onka, quote, Meta's head of Jewish diaspora. Why do they need a head of? Okay, whatever. Told she used her role to secure specific protections for Israelis and Jews.
And one more, the stance of Israel for decades, at least when I was growing up, was very, very pro-free speech. And they said even groups that wore Nazi symbols and stuff like that had the right to protest. And people really agreed with that, and they had a lot of support, and there wasn't as much distrust against that community when they had views like that.
In addition to my work leading the Israel public policy team, I created a new role specifically focused on the Jewish diaspora. It is a privilege to represent Meta to Jewish communities worldwide. I am proud that Meta's commitment to addressing anti-Semitism on our platforms has remained steadfast, especially after October 7th. Our policies are industry-leading in protecting Jewish people and Israelis on our platforms. Our community standards include policies that prevent harassment, violence, and incitement, and include a robust framework to combat anti-Semitism. Our hateful conduct policy includes specific protections for Israelis and Jews. We banned Holocaust denial and distortion back in 2020. We changed industry thinking on this issue, designating denial as hate speech rather than misinformation. It wasn't just about facts, it was about protecting people from harmful conduct. We banned content with harmful stereotypes about Jews, such as the claim that Jews run the world or other major institutions. We updated our policies to recognize that the term Zionist can be used as a proxy for Jews and Israelis. We banned content claiming Zionists run the world or control the media, and we do not allow for dehumanizing comparisons of Zionists. It's a delicate balance between safety and expression. My role is to ensure that the voices of Israelis and the Jewish community are heard in this policymaking process. In addition,
She said, like, she literally, hold on. No, I need to read it from there. We banned content claiming Zionists run the world or control the media. We, the media, banned content that says that we control it. That's, I mean, if she doesn't see the oxymoron there.
And I actually brought that clip. It was just ridiculous what she was saying, but I actually brought that clip up to specifically talk about making specialty classes or groups.
Yes.
Now, Jewish people, I understand there is anti-Semitism. That being said, if if you start creating a specialty group or class with specialty laws and protections, then you're going to have another group and another group and another group. And if pretty soon you have absolutely no free speech, what you have are hate speech laws. And we see this going on in Canada right now. I mean, man, that clip right there just really lends into all the conspiracies said about Israel. And Israel used to be so much better with how they interacted with the world. Under Netanyahu, things have really gone sideways.
Yeah. And I think on both sides, there's both ridiculous claims, ridiculous actions being taken, and I've talked about it.
Well, I would be a lot more sympathetic to Israel if they weren't trying to take away free speech in the public sector,
and a bunch of other things.
Through the public sector and the Donald Trump administration. That's the one kind of free speech they actually do censor a lot. And then they're doing it through the private industry. We've seen the head of Facebook there talk about it.
Well, yeah, and she said she created this new position.
Well, and then they just talk about it so openly, like censorship is a great thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Because for them it is, but again, if you create specific identity groups that are protected in certain ways, but while not protecting the rest of the citizens or the country, then you get things like this happening. But we're going over to, oh no, hold on, let me read the last few comments.
Well, yeah, we're going to head over to RUMBLE in just a moment to finish the show, but we're going to read the comments and then...
Wig says fake news law, might as well speak Hebrew. But again, I think we're pretty balanced. I mean, we don't fully say, oh yes, we have to protect Israel and Jews at all costs, but at the same time, we don't just, well, at least me, I don't just hate on them because it's trendy to do so right now.
Yeah, what I'm
like
saying,
if you point out the actual problems that Israel and even the Jewish faith has, then yes, I'll listen to you. But if it's just everything's controlled by, like Candace Owens, everything's controlled by the Israel and the Jews, then you lose a lot of the talking points. Even Nick Fuentes says so.
Listen, up to this point, I've rarely pointed out Israel's stance on censorship just because it hasn't generally come up. Today, we covered 2 clips right there, and I'm not honing in on them because I talk about the EU, the UK, Australia's stance on censorship. They're taking a similar stance. The problem with Israel is they have a much more advanced Silicon Valley than even Silicon Valley does. So when they want to implement things, they can very much implement it. One of the things standing in their way is legislation from these other countries. So yeah, that's why I kind of brought it up today, but every country is really doing it.
Yeah, and we are going over to RUMBLE. The show continues there because the next stories are a bit spicy. But if you're still here on YouTube, please do subscribe, follow us over onto RUMBLE, same channel name, Nat and The Guy. And
if you're not subscribed, please do so. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. And yeah.
Yes, and we'll see you over there. And okay, hold on. Now I have to find the thing. There we go.